Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my big brother, Dagan Moriarty. Long Island represent, my friend. How are you today?
Oh, hi. Represent. I'll grab the titties so you could see it.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have said boobies. I apologize.
Titties. Titties is a little vulgar, isn't it?
It's
Is it more vulgar?
I was shocked at that coming out of my own mouth.
We'll find out if we get
Yeah, I was a little shocked
demonetized.
at that, too. I'm sorry, Ben. What did you say?
We'll find out if we get demonetized whether it's more vulgar or not.
Let me grab my titties like seven seconds into the, like specifically what YouTube asks you not to do.
Yeah.
How's everything going, Dave?
Everything's okay. Yeah, I was just looking at our list of topics for today. This is a veritable Chinese buffet of topics. I'll be damned if there's not something for everybody here.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure, my friend.
Proud of that.
Good to see you.
Good to see
It's
you.
good to see you. And I like your shirt, like we were saying, a Long Island shirt. Now, usually, so people see we wear a lot of Long Island gear, especially I do. And it's always that Long Island that looks like a fish. That's our friends from, they run a huge clothing company on Long Island now called Carlson. And I went to school with those guys, and so did our sister Allie. So we're really closely connected with them, and I love repping their stuff. So it was weird to me when I saw, usually we see everyone, like family gatherings, everyone's got Long Island shit. We were talking about how much it's like a cult, you know. But
true.
when I see Long Island on Dagan's shirt without the Carlson logo, just straight up, I'm like, well, what is this?
Yeah, something
You know,
new.
because it's right. This is actually Long
Fresh
Island.
take.
So, well, it's good to see you, my friend.
You too.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. How did you like my rendition of Futures on the drums before we started?
It was great.
Thank
I
you.
liked it. Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
very nice.
Thank you.
You're going to have to, maybe you can start doing some like YouTube covers or whatever.
Yeah, that'd
there's
be fun.
people
Oh,
that do
yeah.
that, something like that. But I'm good. You guys, you're talking about the Long Island represent. We here in Pittsburgh area, whatever, have a lot of people that do the same type of clothes, but I find them to be a bit on the chuggy side, like kind of lame. Like I really Dagan, I like yours because it's clean.
Yeah,
It's got
clean is
the
good.
location. It just has one word. You'll get ones around here that say like yins and or something like it's stuff like that. And I don't know. It doesn't quite hit right for me. And I also, to be honest, and I'm curious, Ben, what you think about this is that we're from Butler, which is, about 50 minutes drive from Pittsburgh. And I can feel like I can confidently say we're from Pittsburgh, but it also kind of feels like we're not. Like we're a little bit posers,
Yeah, I don't know about that because Dagan and I are closer to New York City where we grew up than you are to Pittsburgh. And we would never say we were from New York City.
True.
You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like actually, I don't want to be from New York City. I mean, that's usually like what the vibe was with people I was growing up with. It was like, we're not from New York City, you know?
Yeah.
I've said before, there's a legit Long Island secession movement to make it its own state. Like it's been going on for years.
Yeah.
And both so there's two counties of Long Island. Both supervisors of both counties are secessionists. Like both of them want for Long Island to become its own state. So I can't vibe with that because I don't know. I didn't. Dagan might feel a little different, but I didn't really vibe with New York City when I was a kid. I didn't really care about it.
Yeah, we weren't allowed. I mean, it's very, provincial. Like you have to represent where you're from. Like you don't say you're from the Bronx if you're from Queens. They're like, 10 miles away from each other or something, So it's New York is particularly snobbish about that. I don't know about other cities and other greater, suburban areas. The rules may differ, New York is.
We have a lot of the
particularly
culture
big.
though. Around here we got the pierogies. Everyone's talking about the Stillers. You got your Pittsburgh dads. You got the living room that no one's supposed to go in, the sitting room or whatever. That's got the plastic on the couches and stuff like that. We've got all the great hallmarks.
Pittsburgh's got an Italian thing going, which Long Island obviously does too. And I think that particular thing is Italian old people stuff because we had a room like that too. In our house growing up on Marie Court, we had a room we went in it anyway, but we weren't supposed to. I don't remember one thing happening in that room my entire life.
Yeah.
P.S. The biggest room in the house by a lot.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
by a fucking mile. I don't remember being in there one time for anything.
Now, one particular strange thing about Pittsburgh, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. And I mean, I'm not trying to make this a pseudo topic here, but we have a thing. It's called the Pittsburgh toilet, where in a lot of basements in the Pittsburgh area, there's no stall. It's not a separate room. There's just a commode, just a toilet in the middle of the basement.
And a lot of times, like a shower.
And a shower, right.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that the guys would work at the steel mill. They would come home and their wives were like, don't you fucking come in my living room all nasty. And so they would, go down in the cellar, wash themselves off, take a dump, whatever, and then head upstairs.
I love the toilet.
Awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
that's good stuff. Yeah, that's
I don't
good
have
stuff.
one. I wish I did, though. I've got the shower, or at least the remnants of a shower, but there is no toilet because I feel like that would be like a nice sanctuary, a little home away from home.
Dude, I love that. I love that. See, that's the good stuff. Like that's the geography, that's the history of the area. In San Francisco, and you guys have been there, so maybe you all know this, but it is very common in San Francisco to have 2 rooms for your bathroom, where one room is just the toilet,
just for sure,
and the other room is everything else.
I like that.
And so like it's so like usually in those old Victorians, you'd walk down this massive hallway that would cut the building in half, and then one of the rooms off of it would just be a closet with a toilet in it. Mm-hmm. Then the next room would be like the sink in the bathroom. Or the shower. I don't know why that was, but that was I had never seen that until I went to San Francisco.
A sink in there or no?
Who founded San Francisco?
What do you mean who?
Like what people group, I guess, were predominant there? Because a lot of times like that stuff carries forward from cultures.
Yeah, I would think it was Spanish at first, and then American Chinese influence, although they weren't here after the Americans.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's well, Ben Smith, we haven't introduced you yet. How are you today, my friend? Coming up to us from 180 miles and above Earth.
Yeah.
In low Earth orbit. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. I was thinking about what Dustin said when he said we're from Butler, and I almost said I'm not from Butler. I just live here. You're from Butler. But I was realizing I've lived within an hour of where I'm sitting right now since I was 10 years old. That's 25 years. So I think I'm from here now, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Well, we struggled with that in California because it was a lot of us were not from there. And people, after a while, we'd have conversations where you'd go to a meeting, for instance, right? Like a business meeting, and they'd be like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Long Island. Oh, they're like, oh, you, I'm like, no, I've lived in California for 10 years.
Right.
It's like, what are you talking about? Why are you telling me you're from Long Island then?
Yeah.
And it goes back to the cult. Now, so yeah, I totally understand that struggle. It's like, I've been all over the fucking place though.
Yeah.
I feel like I lived in Maine for multiple years. I've lived in the following places: Maine, New Hampshire, Long Island, San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So both Massachusetts, like regular Massachusetts, and then Boston, 2 different places.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 20 years, I say. 20 years and you get to choose because pride may call you back. Like me and Kyle, I'm always going to be from Long Island. That's a pride thing.
Well, I was born near Cincinnati, and then in between Cincinnati, like I lived there till I was about 5, and then for another 5 years, I lived in Jacksonville, Florida. And I don't want to be from any of the 3 places I've lived. So like
Jacksonville's pretty cool, man. I like Jacksonville's vibe.
Yeah.
My good friend Nate Ahern's from Jacksonville. I love their vibe there. Very interesting people.
I feel like it was definitely up and coming when I lived there. I feel like it's cooler now, but all I remember is it was so hot all the time. No matter what you did, it was hot. You could take a shower and walk outside and be drenched in sweat just because of the humidity. Like Jacksonville's the worst part of the South, in my opinion.
Where is Jacksonville situated in Florida?
It's in the Panhandle, isn't it?
Oh, it's in the
like up where it turns, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Anyway,
on the Gulf Coast.
No,
right,
it's on the coast.
Oh, so it's on the Atlantic coast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I can see it in my head. Got it.
Dustin, I feel like we can't really the only cool Pittsburgh merch I think there is that looks clean. It says 412, which is the area code there, but that's not our area code, so we definitely aren't from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So I at one time had a really cool Pittsburgh shirt that was like the Pittsburgh skyline and had the bat symbol, like the bat. What is it when he calls them out in the air? The
bat signal.
The bat signal.
Right. Yeah.
Damn it. Good start.
Moment.
The bat signal. And that was cool because we had a little bit of a Batman history in the city since they filmed The Dark Knight Rises. So that was around that time.
Right.
So that was
clearly, blatantly filmed at Heinz Stadium.
Yes.
That section. Yeah, that scene.
Oh, yeah.
Good call.
I remember when that happened. I was at a concert across from where the stadium was, a Death Cab for Cutie concert. and there were people walking out and they were drenched in sweat and they had winter coats on because they were trying to film a winter scene in the summer. So they had all of the people that were, standing in to fill the seats in winter coats.
Gotham, take back your city.
You guys have awesome iconography in that city for the sports teams, and you have Carnegie Mellon and you have Pitt.
Yeah.
So you have that. So you don't even need any of this nonsense. We don't have anything. I mean, we have Hofstra.
Yeah, Long Island U and Stony Brook's a good school. But that's not what we're known for. Here are the things we're known for. A lot of Indian burial grounds with ostentatious houses built on top of them. Brookhaven National Laboratory out east where you're not allowed to go. Plum Island.
Bagels.
The reality is Dagan and I went out there a few years ago, is that out east on Long Island, they show them the forks.
Oh, the forks.
Show them on your shirt.
Sure.
Yeah, the forks right there. So that's like out east. That's kind of like a rural, very few people live out there. And that's like where a lot of our rich people live out there. Our dad lives out there now. And there's massive government installations there that are awesome. And people should look it up. The place called Camp Hero, which is like a satellite array. There was all sorts of weird shit going on out there. And Brookhaven Laboratory to this day is locked down. And like a lot of weird shit happens there and we don't know what's going on there. And I had friends that whose dads and moms worked there, and it was kind of like a mysterious thing. So we have this, what I would consider a clandestine sort of situation going on there. Nothing educational. I guarantee you that. In fact, our most famous musical export, Billy Joel, is famous for dropping out of high school.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah.
So no, we're not known for the smarts, I don't think. But the bagels, and we'll get into the pizza in a little while.
Oh, yes, we will.
As well. Well, it's good to be here with all of you. Thank you for being here out there. Thank you for supporting Constellation, our new conversational podcast. It's doing great. We appreciate you, whether on Patreon or free feeds. Couldn't do without you. Pleased to be joined by the producers today for what I think will be some rousing conversations. And Ben is our guest here, and Dustin, you're our guest too. So we'll go to you guys first. But I want to start with your topic, Ben, because it was very intriguing to me and had me laughing to myself a lot and thinking back on this topic. So I'll let you introduce it and take it however you will.
Yeah, and we can obviously take it any direction, but Dustin and I for years have joked, and I'm sure we're not the only ones. It's like a cultural thing to say now, but like we'll be like, where do they get their money? Oh, kid money. And like I'm talking about like things like Roblox and Fortnite and Minecraft and Twitch streamers and YouTubers and like all sorts of stuff like that. And obviously like there's adults. I participate in several of those things, and I know that we all like people of varying ages and backgrounds can funnel money into those things. But what I notice is like there's this strong contingent of people who are getting filthy rich off the backs of children. And I just don't understand where do kids get their money? I mean, I know that there's such a thing. I had friends who grew up and had allowances. My family wasn't able to do that for me. My parents would give me money on occasion when I needed it or when they just wanted to be really kind. Although that mostly happened like after I was in high school and was driving and needed gas to get to work, like that kind of thing. That was mostly when that kind of stuff happened. They helped me when I needed it. But like, I just don't understand the massive, like where it's all coming from, the massive influx of money that comes from the direction of children's hands. And whether that's because their parents are letting them spend it, whether or not it's because they're getting some insane Christmas presents and they're able to make that last or what, like kids are spending money like crazy, like never before. And it's just like, it's insane to me. And then I wonder then too, like on a few levels, how that affects their future, because I could be wrong. Obviously I wasn't as old 30 years ago, so I don't know, but I don't feel like that was the case a long time ago, 30 years ago, a couple generations ago, that kids had that much money at their disposal. And I wonder just like how that will affect a future generation where kids are used to being able to spend money, whether it's theirs or their parents, and as compared to people who, people my age, we got allowances, stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like it's on a different scale. And maybe that's just my old man yells at cloud energy showing. I don't know. But if I got a little bit of money as a kid, I wasn't dropping it on a streamer or something. Most of the time I was hoarding it in my closet away from my sister. But like, I don't know. Dustin, weigh in, because you and I have talked about the concept of kid money so many times.
Right. Yeah, I come from sort of the same background as you, where it wasn't until I was later in high school well, not even late high school, but when I was older that I started to get an allowance. So when I was a kid, the primary way that I got money was I was given a reward for good grades. So usually 4 times a year, that's when I could get some cash. And so normally, and when I was a kid, when you'd only get money like a few times a year, you can't keep it. At least I couldn't. I had to go immediately to GameStop and look at every item in the store and figure out, do I want Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, or do I want to go for this PS2 game or whatever?
I mean, you're still kind of like that.
Oh, yes, definitely. But it is interesting thinking about specifically the digital aspect that we live in now that I think enables some of what you're talking about. I remember first getting an Xbox 360, and that was the first like online. We had Xbox Live, but it wasn't quite the same. But Xbox 360 had the marketplace, and I remember having a very clear conversation with my dad where I asked him, I was like, "Hey, I want to buy this. Here's the money, but I can't use my cash to buy it." He's like, "Okay, well, we can put in my credit card into this, but you will not use it unless I say you can." And that was the rule. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's just my dad had a different level of trust, which it doesn't seem like it should be that's that high, but you hear all the time about these stories about parents let their kid, they put their credit card in their phone or their Switch or whatever, their game console, and you hear about all these purchases being made, sometimes to a ridiculous degree, but I'm sure that these small purchases happen all the time. And I'm willing to bet that so many of these kids feel like they've got a one-up on their parents because they're like, oh, they won't notice $1. They won't notice $2 or whatever, which eventually they probably do get caught. But I don't know. To me, too, it's like this matter of, I don't know, maybe we are getting old because it's like we do buy every once in a while a cosmetic or something like that in a game. Yeah. But with some of these Fortnite skins, it's not just that you're spending $20 on a skin. I've done that kind of stupid shit maybe 3 or 4 times, but the frequency that you hear about with these kids, the amount of $20 skin here, $10 here, it's crazy. So I don't know. I feel like I've talked a bit, but I don't know if I've come to any sort of conclusion. I guess it's naturally to throw it over to Dagan here as the only. Well, Ben, you have kids, but they're not quite the age of where they're asking you to buy Fortnite skins yet. So So Dagan, where does this?
They asked me to buy them games, but not Fortnite skins. Yeah,
you'll get there.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, this is a great topic. Now, let me be honest with you guys. When I got the email from you all last night, I spent 5 to 10 minutes thinking this was about Kid Rock, the the now defunct country rap rocker guy. And then I was like, wait a second. And then I took an additional probably 4 to 5 minutes thinking, all right, this is some TikToker I don't know about. Then I realized, oh, this is about kids and money and allowances and all that kind of stuff. I get it. So, and then I thought, like, even if the's a lingering doubt, it might be more entertaining to just talk about the wrong thing on the show.
Just talk about Kid Rock for
eventually that's going to happen. But this is fascinating. This reminded me of me growing up, and this reminded me about my kids now. My son, first of all, with Fortnite, my son is 12 now, and he discovered Fortnite kind of late. Like, I would say maybe he went hard in the paint for 2 years and was so into it that I saw him run it right into the ground. He can't even look at it anymore. That's how into it he was. It was actually scary, but it just by natural procedure, it just kind of fell off. He actually went back, got so tired of Fortnite that he went back to Minecraft. Which was actually kind of a weird dynamic and interesting.
God forbid he plays a fucking real game. This is your son.
I know. Not even on the retro stuff. He won't play Uncharted 4 with me. Like, it's just like, I don't know what we're gonna do with him. Gotta let him come. We gotta let him come around slowly. Gotta let it happen of its own accord. Can't push.
Beatings will continue until morale improves. Let him know that. For sure.
But the downloadable skins, the DLC and the skins and the downloadable content, it's predatory. I mean, I saw it single-handedly. I was like, wow, I would love a piece of Epic Games. What they must be making an untold amount of money daily.
Billions a year.
I mean, it's like insane to me.
Yeah.
And, say what you want about Fortnite and everything like that. I know that's not applicable to the topic or where we're going with this today, but it's interesting because with my kids, I have to admit, at some point along the line, I was like, am I damaging them with my philosophy? More so my philosophy than Helene's philosophy. Helene's a little more of the mind of let them do chores and work at something and contribute in return for allowances, right? Mm-hmm. And I was always more of the mind of just extremely compassionate and let them be kids. Like I'm very much of that mindset. Like just let them be kids. They're going to get to work their whole lives. And kind of knowing in the back of my head that's not maybe the best mindset, but kind of doubling down on it. Like just let them do it. You know what I mean? If they need $20, give them $20. Who cares? Let them be children, type of thing. And I have to say, we had relatively strict parents when it came to our behavior, manners, how we acted in public, all that stuff. But they never, I'll say for myself, I'm the oldest of four, obviously. They never expected me to do chores ever. In fact, the first chore I ever did was when we moved to our larger house and we got a ride-on mower, a tractor, and I would mow the lawn for my dad and get $20 a week. I was 13. So I never really did any chores before that. And that was the only chore I ever really had.
That's a lot of money then.
Right. And that was a lot of money. That's starting in 1987. So through the late 80s.
Yeah. I mean,
early
to put that
90s.
in the context, put that in Colin context, but this is just the frame I think about it at that time. That would buy you like 5 GI Joes. I mean, that's a lot of
sure.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, back then it kind of went a long way. You could stretch a 20. You could stretch a 20 pretty far back then.
Yeah.
And the other thing was my kids are really different. Like my daughter, who's older, she'll be 16 shortly. She was always, I don't want to say materialistic, but she always liked stuff. She always liked things. She was into collecting as a kid. She would always be on something. Like she was into strawberry shortcake. She was into Shopkins. And when we go to the store, she was into Justice, like all the kind of bejeweled little kid jewelry and clothing and all that kind of stuff before she got into like real clothes or real teenager clothes or whatever. And this is actually a kind of a nice tie-in. About a year ago, she opened up her own checking account because she started to go out with friends for lunch. We dropped them off at the strip mall in town, whatever. And she wanted access to her own money. And I was worried about it because her behavior was very much like myself as a kid. The money burns a hole in your pocket, right? You can't keep it. You got to spend it. For me, it was G.I. Joe and Star Wars and Transformers and Voltron or whatever I was collecting as a kid in the 80s. And for her, it was always the same thing. If she got money from grandma or grandpa, mom and pop, she would always want to spend it. Oh, I want to go to the mall. I want to get this. I want to get that. So I was like, she opens up her account with a couple of $1,000s. It's going to be depleted within a month, and she surprised me. She was the exact opposite. She's very good. She's very spoiled, but she's also very good with her money. She doesn't spend. She gets a check for Christmas from a grandparent, from an aunt and uncle, whatever. She deposits it and she's saving. So I could see it played out. My philosophy played out okay with her. She doesn't think money is just some expendable commodity and that it's going to grow on trees and she's going to get it whenever she wants. So it worked out. Mm-hmm. With my son, he never really wanted anything until he discovered video games and he discovered Jordans, sneakers, vis-a-vis his interest in basketball, which was the interest in basketball, great. Interest in Jordans, it's ridiculous, but the price of Nikes have been ridiculous since I was in 6th grade. Now he's in 6th grade and he's going through the same thing. So for me, it's like watching their habits develop through our parenting. You know what I mean? Like, are we doing right by them? Are we flying in the face of how we should be raising them and all that kind of stuff? So far, it's working out. And the thing is, too, this reminded me of something, too, Ben, your topic, because when I met my wife, we had very different upbringings. She was a very, pretty much upper middle class kid. And we met in our late teens, early 20s. And my parents, very blue collar. And also, when I left the house at 19 or 20 to go to college, they were very much of the mindset of pushing you out of the nest. You're on your own. You're in college, get a job. You have to pay rent. You have to fend for yourself, buy food, all that kind of stuff. She was my wife, Helene, was very independent, but I always marveled because she had her dad's gold card with her. And she could just spend, her parents were like, if you need something, buy it. If you need art supplies, if you need food, you need groceries, you need clothes, whatever, just go down to South Street, buy what you need. And she never did. And I always marveled at that because she had that means at her fingertips, but it was very important for her to sort of stress her own independence and do it her way. In fact, I don't think I ever saw her use her parents' credit card. So that reminds me of my daughter, where it's like she always kind of got what she wanted, especially through me. She has her grandparents too, 2 sets of grandparents that spoiled her. But through me, it's like, yeah, I was very much like, I spoiled Ilya to death.
Old softy.
Right.
Yeah.
But she still somehow got that's not, she still wants to be very much like her mom, and that she wants to be independent. She wants to do it herself. She doesn't ask for a lot. She has access to Apple Pay. If she goes out with her friends, she could pay for something via, through my credit card, through Apple Pay, and she doesn't use it. So it reminds me, and if she does want to use it, she calls me first. If if she's buying a smoothie, Yeah. So I'm very proud of her for that. And it reminds me a lot of her mom, but I could definitely see it. I think we got lucky because I could definitely see it going wrong for people, especially if they have access to your Apple Pay or your PayPal, and they're on Roblox or they're on Fortnite and they want this $30 Star Wars skin or Dragon Ball skin or something. And I could see that going wrong very quickly for parents. And I do also wonder, and I guess this is directly related to somebody's income and how much they're paying attention, but I wonder how much kids and parents get into it over this. And I wonder how much parents just take a very hands-off approach and don't even pay attention and let the kids rack up hundreds of dollars a month, again, if they have it, and just kind of chalk it up to a shrug and say, I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I've always wondered, like, I used to think that my parents wouldn't give me any money because we were broke. And I mean, that was true, but that wasn't the reason. My dad just saw a big value in having me earn my money. And like I said, when I actually needed something, they were there for me. It wasn't like they just withheld anything from me. And that's how I am with my kids too. If they need something, we're going to buy it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if they need it, they need it. And they don't ask me for things terribly often, but when they do, it's like something gigantic or something. It's either something like super mega, I can't afford this for myself, I'm not buying it for you. Or it's like, can I have this really stupid thing that costs $15, but it's going to break tomorrow? And I'm like, well, that's also a no, because I want you to learn that. And so there have been times where I've been like, if you want that, you can pay for it, but I will give you this advice. It will break tomorrow. And then it breaks tomorrow. And then they learn, like that's at least my hope that they learn. So
yeah.
It's interesting to see the differences in my kids. I mean, they're only 7 and 9, so their personalities and behaviors are still developing and everything. But like the one, if he wants something, the older one, if he wants something, he will save for it. But if he doesn't have something in his sights, he will just spend his money. The other one is like, I'm going to save $300 to get a Switch. And I'm like, okay, if you save $300, I'll pay for half of it, and you can keep the other $150.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's my deal with him.
Love that.
Well, that deal's been going for 3 years, and I don't think he's ever had more than $7 in his pocket. So, like, their personalities are very different in that. Yeah.
Well, he's looking at the interest rates. He's looking at the market. I think he wants. He feels like the money is better playing out there.
Part of the reason I made that deal, to be honest, I made that deal with my older kid too, and then I ended up getting a deal from a friend on the Switch. So I made that deal, and I followed through. I paid for half of it, but the other one I kind of only made that deal because I kind of knew he wouldn't do it. But if he does, I'll follow through. I'll do it for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, like that kind of behavior, like supplementing your kid or helping them out. I like that. It reminds me a lot of what my mom, and I don't know if Dagan, if they did this for you, but our mom and dad, but especially my mom, I would go into KB or Toys R Us or something and pick out a G.I. Joe, and then I'd bring it up to the person. I was probably like in first grade or second grade. I'd bring it up and I'd give them $1 because I saved this $1 and I thought I could buy a G.I. Joe, and then I never noticed like my mom was like making like being like above the being like, here's the other $2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that reminds me a lot of that. And it's cute. Like, see, what I think about in this whole conversation is just how options have changed and wondering how I would have been in this mode. Because when I went to college, people have to remember, when I went to college, the PS2 was 2 years old. I mean, there was no concept of like the way we buy games and play games and sell games. And that wasn't a thing. You went to a store and bought a game. I remember buying a game online for the first time. Final Fantasy X was the first game I ever bought online. And I bought it with a friend because if we bought 2 copies, I think we got like $5 off or something like that, you know, a guy that I worked at a deli with. And I remember that being like, whoa, that like blew my mind. And then starting to buy games online during that era, but it was still physical. It was still $50 for every game, basically, unless you were getting some shovelware, especially during the late PS2 and into the Wii era. And I just wonder if, because money burned a hole in my pocket when I was a kid too, with rare exception, right on through high school. And I looked at money so much differently then than I do now. And I don't know when that kind of turned on for me, but I often reflect on how much money I spent and how much money I ultimately wasted and what I could have done with that money. And I guess it really doesn't matter because it comes, everything's fine, obviously. And the memories are really robust. I gave away all my hockey cards a few months ago to a listener. And I had thousands and thousands of hockey cards from probably between 1989 and 1995 or something like that. And I used to buy hockey cards all the time. I was obsessed with hockey. And I looked at them and I'm like, these are probably worth something. I have the memories. I was going through each of them, remembering the players and all of this. And then a listener got in touch. I don't know. We talked about it and he was like, he was going to buy them. And then he's like, I just don't really have the money, but I appreciate your time, whatever. I'm like, you can just have them. Like,
that's huge.
And it was, as I was going through them and sending them out, I'm like, this is like 1,000, but not 1,000, thousands of dollars of things then that like were just bought for me. Like Aunt Joni would buy me a whole box of cards, you know, where you get like 40 things or whatever. And so it's so much wasted money, but with so few vectors, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I just didn't have the opportunity. I would buy just toys, Star Wars toys. I owned every Star Wars toy release between 1995 and Episode 1. So that's a lot of money right there. I remember in high school saving up. I used to use a TV in my room from the 70s. And I would, everything through my PS2 and my Dreamcast was hooked up to this thing. Yeah. And in high school, I finally was like, I'm going to buy a TV. I had a job at the deli. I made $6 an hour under the table. So it was reasonable enough. And, but even then I would go to Nobody Beats the Wiz, which was an old electronics store in the tri-state area. And I would like look at the TVs and I wanted this Sony Trinitron. And I don't remember what it was. It was probably like $800 or $900. And I'm like, I'm going to get this Sony Trinitron, probably like 32 inches or something like that. And then eventually I saved up $400 and I'm like, fuck it. And I just went and bought like a smaller Sony, you know, like just bought the smaller Sony Trinitron, like the, whatever it was, 24 inches or something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny to think about this, but I will say this to our parents' credit. I do remember when chores came into our lives. I wonder, Dagan, if you remember, because I was very young. Do you remember when I was before mom left, I think, but even especially after the divorce, where there was like all of these charts that mom and dad made and like things that they were trying to get us to do. I remember that so clearly. I don't know where that came from, but mom and dad did give me ways to like earn some money. I never had personally had an allowance where it's just like, here's your money every week, which I had friends like that, but it was like, here's your money every week, but clean the house, you know, mow the lawn, do this, do that, and then you can take your money. And that was just the way it was. So I felt okay about that. And I think that that's a good use of dad's money too. And looking back at it, I thought, I used to think of it more charitably, which I do still, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm doing something for you though, that you don't have to do. And through the time is money kind of lens that exists as well. And then as far as getting money otherwise, the only time I remember having lots of money and then it being taken away from me basically was communion, which was my best friend growing up was a year older than me. So he experienced things a year before me. And so I remember sitting on his bed, Indian style, in his room after his communion with just thousands of dollars.
Counting that loot.
And he was just checks and money and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is insane. And I remember when my communion came, very similar experience, but all taken away from me. And to be perfectly honest with you, I had no idea where that money went.
Oh, really?
So, like I had a bank account at some point, but I don't know.
What you did
like
with
I don't know what I'm sure something, it got folded into something or something of that nature, but like there was always this vaunted like, oh, you put money away into the bank thing, but I had no idea what was going on. That was like a whole dad situation.
Unless it gained interest and you got hundreds of thousands sitting there now.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, I forgot to tell you.
I'm going to become a tycoon.
That's one thing that kids learning kind of like a trade for service, labor, and and you get money in return for that. That's one positive. I do remember mom and dad implementing that very late. I was probably 16 or so. And then for me, it was way too late by then. We were way beyond the pale, and it was like,
yeah, it's like you do the vacuuming, you do the baseboards, you do this. So it's like it was like a squat. It was like a squat team,
a checklist with stars, stickers or whatever. I think Dana and Allie, our sisters, were probably a lot more helpful. I just wasn't helpful at all when I was a kid. I had no I really had no knowledge of how to do that. Like thinking back, like that really wasn't instilled in me or expected of me at all. And I was also very much like Dustin. Like when I was young, 70s into the 80s and through all the 80s, I got things from mom and dad like Dustin for a good report card in exchange for good grades or Christmas or my birthday and Easter. We were allowed to pick like one, big present or something. Otherwise, I wasn't getting anything. Now, I had grandma and grandpa specifically in my life to fill in the in-betweens, and they did spoil the hell out of me, and they did save me from not getting things most of the year, because if I wanted something, I would never even have to ask. They would just be like, let's go to the toy store. I remember that dynamic existing where it was like, we're going to go to the toy store. I never once had to ask. I had that sort of nature that was instilled by mom and dad, like be polite, don't ask for stuff. And I never had to. So I was very fortunate as a kid. But that stuff, I was a collector, that stuff, those Star Wars figures, those G.I. Joes, the Transformers, they made me happy. And I didn't just put them on a shelf either. Like I played with these things daily. Like this was my world. That was my entire existence, was these things. So I could never keep a buck in my pocket. And I save now. I'm fortunate in my career and everything, but I am not like, I will spend money. Like I'm not afraid to have a good time and be a little bit of a hedonist and just say like, look, like life's short. Try to have a 50-50 attitude where it's like, all right, I'm going to save. I have to be a responsible human being. I'm a parent. I own a home. I have a mortgage and a wife and everything. But at the other hand, like let's have a good time. So try to kind of keep those two philosophies in check or in tandem or whatever. But yeah, that does speak to me. I really could have, the more I think about this, I really could have done my kids a disservice, but thank God. And maybe it's because I'm on one hand and Helene's a little more stringent, a little more strict, a little more, tough love than I am, and a little more. She's not a Nazi in any way, shape, or form, but she's like, she definitely holds them responsible for it. Look, if you want something for a specific thing, save, or if you want $20 to go out to dinner with your friends on Friday, walk the dog at night for 5 days. Like certainly nothing unreasonable, but do something in exchange for what we're going to give you type of thing. And I'm more of the mind of like, here's 20, like go have a good time. Have a good time.
Yeah.
I had like a really hard thing the other day because when my oldest got a Switch, he wanted access to the online stuff. And he plays all the old retro games and everything too, in addition to like playing Mario Maker and Minecraft with his friends occasionally. But I made him a deal. I think it's like 35. Is it 35 for the family plan? It's something like that. It's like 35 bucks.
Yeah.
And I made him a deal that I would pay the $35 so that both of our Switches had access to it. And every year, once a year, and it's around his birthday time is when he got it. And I said, every year around that time, you got to give me $5 to have access to this stuff. It's $35. All I want from you is $5. And I don't use it at all. Like the only thing I really have on there is my backed up saves. And I don't think I've turned on my Switch in 6 months or more. So like it's not benefiting me at all, except for the, knowing that he's got access to this stuff and that like it is a decent service for $35 a year. Anyway, the point is a couple months ago, it was time. And he said, I don't have $5. I said, okay. When you have $5, I want it. I didn't actually want it. I don't need
You're like
it.
shaking him down.
I don't need the $5, but like the agreement was, if you were going to have access to this, you had to pay $5 out of the $35 a year to have access to it. So a couple weeks ago, he had like $8 or $9, and I don't know where he got it. He might have done some extra. Like we have some chores that they like have to do, and I mean like one or two things. Like they got to empty the dishwasher every day. Then we have stuff for them that's like part of being part of the house. Then we have other stuff. It's like, you don't have to do this stuff, but if you want to, I'll throw you a few bucks. So we have some stuff like that. But he had a couple dollars and he wanted to go to the Five Below and spend it. And I was like, wait, do you have money? And he was like, yeah, I have like $8 or $9. And I said, well, how much do you owe me? And he's like, $5. And I could just see like the life sink out of him. And I wanted nothing in the world more than just let him keep his $5. But I knew, like, from experiences in my past, that I felt like I would have at that age, especially, and even maybe now, needed to pay that $5 to understand that I had a bill I had to pay. And I know he's only 9 years old, but like, I don't know. It still kind of makes me feel bad when I think about it. But I'm like, I gave you 4 extra months. I'm not charging you interest. I mean, I didn't make this argument to him or anything, but I'm like, I feel like you wanted this. It is a bill that you agreed you were going to pay. And I feel like I would be doing you a disservice by letting you not pay a bill you agreed to. But there was still something in my gut that was like, just let the kid have $5,
it's tough love.
Like, yeah, exactly.
You're doing the right thing.
I struggle with it.
You're doing the right thing. By the way, Five Below, talk about predatory. I think you hit on something here. I think that store exists for kids' allowances. Yeah. It's got to. My kids are the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are all over the nation. Kids all over the globe are probably saying that. I got $5. Let's go.
The only reason I go to Five Below is to buy phone chargers. Like when my cord gets frayed or something, I'm like, well, I'll buy one at Five Below and it'll last.
I've never
me
been
6
in one
months,
before.
Never been there?
No.
Don't bother. I mean,
I don't really strange stores.
I don't need anything.
It's $1.
I'm not in want of anything.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like this is a great topic. The way kids interact with the economy, the way parents allow their kids to interact with the economy, and the unthinkable amount of money that some people do spend on their kids. We talk about Dagan's good friend growing up, Tommy, who and Ben knows because you edit every show that we do, had every set of G.I. Joes twice, every Transformer twice, all these things. Like, it's incredible amount of money. And our parents definitely weren't doing that. Although I must admit that I played a sport that was so gratuitously expensive that I actually, in hindsight, feel bad that I was even playing this thing for so long. Like I hockey is so expensive. I played it all year for 10 years or something. And it was thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And I don't know. It really is this upper class sport, unfortunately. Yeah. Just by nature of it, it sucks because it's so.
That does suck for the kids.
It's so good, but there's just so many barriers to it. Like you just ice time alone is a huge expense.
Yeah. That's money well spent for a parent, though, Kyle. No parent would look back on that and say, I didn't. We go through that with Lilia with her dance. It really gives them something to pursue. It gives them something positive and constructive to apply themselves to. Keeps them, really, that old adage of keeps them out of trouble is so true, I think. So I'm sure mom and dad don't regret that. But, when we were young, they really didn't have the money to buy. They didn't have the money to buy us one of something. They definitely didn't have us, the money that my friend's family had to buy two of something and have. Again, that's a fascinating story just for having that vision in the 70s. His mom was a biologist and his dad was an accountant. These weren't people entrenched in nerd culture, but they had the vision to do this. That was the fascinating thing.
It is amazing.
In the late 70s. So look, we're going to put one aside. And, that collection, if they still have it, could be priceless.
Well, here's how I know that it wasn't prescient then was prescient then and wasn't common is because I was just watching Antiques Roadshow and someone had a sealed copy of Mario 3, which is awesome. Right. And it's like if people were cognizant of how big this would be, everyone would have bought 2 copies of it, but no one did. And in fact, most of us threw our boxes away, and some people threw their instruction manuals away and all this. It's like no one had any fucking clue, no consciousness at all of.
No.
Well, if everyone had bought 2 copies, it wouldn't be worth as much.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The catch-22 of all of it. But Yeah, good topic, fun topic. Dustin, do you have any parting words before we? Because I'm going to go to you next for this next topic, so I'll just throw it to you.
The only parting words are, fuck the kids that got everything. The kid that got the Harry Potter Quidditch game from the fucking Tooth Fairy. You kidding me? I was in 3rd grade and I was like, are you kidding me? I knew it was fucking parents and I was mad.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I got $1 from the Tooth Fairy, I think.
Yeah,
that's what I got
exactly.
too. Is I think $1. Yeah. But it's like, and just mom and dad, if you're listening, sorry. It's like, yeah, I played ice hockey, and then they're like, oh, what instrument do you want to play? And clarinet, saxophone. No, I'll play the drums, like an entire drum set.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if you, as a kid, were plotting the most expensive things, though. Like,
well, dude, that's what's so funny.
I knew that was the most expensive.
That's what's so funny. It's like, it wasn't even just playing hockey. It's like I became a goalie, which is maybe the most expensive position in any sport you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And thousands of dollars of equipment that you need, and I'm growing. So it's like, oh my God, my 32-inch leg pads, whatever, are just too small. Like there's just nothing you could do. You got to get new ones. $1,500, So I'm sorry, mom and dad. That was definitely not my intention, but I just happened to have picked some of the most expensive hobbies that a person could possibly have. So thank you for facilitating that. At least I wasn't into Legos. That would have been the ultimate trifecta.
Yeah.
Like our nephew Dash loves Legos, and he just sent me a picture a few days ago. He spent like $300 at the Lego store. Just on all. I'm like, Jesus Christ,
they're
what the fuck are you doing?
Expensive. I'm watching Lego now finally peel back and make things, because it's still at that point, but it was getting to the point of, again, barrier for entry. Like kids should be able to play with Legos if they want. It's like they can't even do it. I mean, they're that pricey, and
I don't want to derail us further, but yeah, like you can't buy just. Very rarely do I ever see just like regular Legos. They're all branded and licensed. Yeah,
licensed.
And that has to drive the price like crazy. So.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, stakeholders. That's why I always tell Micah is like, and it's just especially true when Dagan was young, but when I was a kid, there were no licensed Legos.
No.
That wasn't a thing.
Nope.
Yeah, that was, and I it's so funny how that evolved over time. But Dustin, let's throw it back to you and get into your topic number 2.
Sure. So just a little background on this, because I've started a notes, in your notes app on your phone. I've just started, like, if I think of a good topic, I'll write it down, right? So I try to gear these towards who is going to be on the episode with me.
Smart.
Ben's here. And this also, the timing is just about right, where this will hit free feeds on February 15th. It's right around Valentine's Day. And I know you guys covered Valentine's Day last week, but I want to take, this may be Constellation's most personal topic yet.
It's about
and I talked about liking romance anime last time I was on. I wanted to ask you guys about falling in love, because we've got 3 married dudes here and one that's going to be married later in the year.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how my own experience and how other people's can be like exactly the same and so wildly different in how they treat this extremely integral part of the human experience for many of us. And so I think the actual topic, I said the moment you knew you fell in love, right? Because I don't know, a lot of people have this idea of a soulmate, which I always found to be kind of weird and almost like somewhat like Calvinistic in a secular way. That's like, oh, there's this one person that I'm destined to be with. I'm like, okay, well, do you have no free will then? Like, that never quite made sense to me why there's so many people that believe in that. But I do believe that, there are people that you're going to be way more likely to be compatible with. And it's always the difficult part of like figuring out who those people are, who that person is. And so for me, in my moment of falling in love, talking about Holly, was throughout a lot of the time in high school, I dated a bunch of different girls that I was attracted to for different reasons. And I never have thought in like, man, I really regret my time with this person, which I know that it's totally justifiable if you date someone that you're not supposed to, that's not ideal and you may regret it. But I was blessed enough that the people I dated, I feel like I learned more about myself more than anything else. That's kind of the process of dating. Like, hey, okay, this personality type or this trait is not compatible with me. And for Holly, what's really interesting is that I don't know if it wasn't like this moment where I was like, yeah, I need to marry her, because we knew each other for many, many years. In fact, I think she moved back to this area and started going to the same church as me in 2005 or 6. So we knew each other for a really, really long time. But the funny part was that the moment that the thing that clicked in my mind is so incredibly stupid and mundane, but if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense, is Holly and I were hanging out with a group of friends one summer, and we would often go to the drive-in here in Butler. We've got this awesome drive-in. You go do carload night. You like shove people in the back, in the trunk and stuff like that. Very, very dangerous. We always had a great time. And
That's the way it should be.
One of these times, I think Holly, we were getting together with this group of friends, and she ended up coming to my house a little bit early. And we were just going to like hang out for a little bit. And it was like maybe like half an hour. And I think I was dating someone else at the time. But it wasn't like a weird, like, oh, you're hanging out with another girl while you're dating someone. It's just like, she's just going to be here a little bit beforehand. And when she got there, I was playing World of Warcraft, as I did in my high school summers. Was I would load up, I'd get like a 90-day game card or whatever, and I would play World of Warcraft till 4 a.m. every night. And that was what I did in the summers in that time. And the thing that shocked me was when she came in, she was like, "What are you playing?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm playing this World of Warcraft game." And I like started to X out, and she's like, "Oh, show it to me." And that was the moment, because every girl, and I don't want to say every girl, but a lot of the girls I had dated, obviously we had attraction to one another, but it only extended to the things that were relevant to their own interests, right? But here comes a girl that shows interest in something that she doesn't really have any right to be interested in, which now knowing Holly for all these years and being married, it's like, of course she would also be interested in World of Warcraft. But just this simple act of like, hey, I'm not just interested in you. I guess it would be interested in you, but interested in the things that you like as well. Now, obviously a lot of things happen between then where it's like, I started to have a crush on Holly. I ended up breaking up with the girl I was with, and we eventually started dating, and then obviously got married and stuff. But it was that moment that kind of changed everything. And obviously I could get into more depth, but trying to keep it to that singular aspect, that was the thing that kind of changed everything. So for my fellow lovers in the room, I'd love to hear your side of this as well.
Ben, let's go to you first.
I thought we were going to talk about Dustin and I being lovers in public anymore, but here we go.
Cats out of
I
the
don't know,
bag.
man. My journey is kind of weird. So without getting into too much backstory, I dated this girl in high school and wasted my college years on her. And we dated for like 6 years. And granted, we started dating when we were in like 10th or 11th grade. So, it's a different kind of love. Although, they always say that, oh, that's just puppy love. Well, puppy loves still love the puppies, right? So, but I would definitely say that I love this woman. Like matter of fact, I bought her a ring. I put a deposit on a custom ring the day she told me 6.5 years into our relationship that she'd been cheating on me. So that was a huge blow. And at that moment, I was like, I will never feel the same way. Like it's your first love, really. Like there were other girls I liked and when, probably even told them I loved them in like junior high and high school, but it's not, it was whatever.
You tell them whatever's necessary at the time.
Whatever's necessary. Absolutely. But that seemed like a huge thing to me. And it was a huge thing. I was an adult. I was working. I was out of college by the time that happened, and it really like messed me up pretty bad. And then to add insult to injury, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm willing to let to like move on. I figured out what had happened. It didn't seem that serious to me. I was like, let's go forward. I wasn't really ready to give her the ring at that point. Still, after that, I was like, well, I'm not going to tell her about that. But and then she broke up with me like officially on Valentine's Day. So like the day I bought her a ring, she told me she was cheating on me, and the day of Valentine's Day she broke up with me.
Wow, so you're like the statistic we were talking about on the last show about people breaking up on Valentine's Day. It was like I think 6% or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, hey, in hindsight, this is the best thing that ever happened.
Sure.
We spent a lot of time. We spent 6.5 years together. We learned so much about ourselves, about each other, about who we wanted, and I think that's what prepared me. I knew then what I wanted, but I still thought I was never gonna meet anybody. I'm old. I'm out of college. Like, where do you meet people now? And there was this girl who'd been going to my church for years, and I knew her brother pretty well, but I kind of knew her, and I never was like attracted to her. I didn't have eyes for anybody else. Not that I didn't like notice her, but it was never in my mind. And then just one day somebody was like, you should ask her out. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. Like, she's perfect. Like, she's awesome. And I think the first time we went out, and so I asked her to go out, and she was like, yeah, absolutely. And then like later, a couple months later, she was like, by the way, whenever you asked me to go out, and I said, yeah, absolutely. What I meant to say was absolutely not. And I said, absolutely. And I'm glad I did. But like, she was like, not sure she wanted to date me. Like, she'd even thought about it, I guess, and was like, no, I don't. But anyway, that's my wife, Emily, by the way. But she, like, because I had already observed her, not like creepily stalking her or anything, but like I noticed her. I'd seen her. I had watched her interact in a like, I wasn't like trying to, we were just friendly with each other and like noticing her attributes and everything. And I think it was like, I knew I liked her. And then we went out once or twice, and I was like, I've had experience knowing what I want and what I don't want. I think I was 23 or 24. Not that that's that old, but to me, I've always wanted to be someone who got married younger. And it was just like, it was like a slow process, but also very sudden. Like once my attention, I never noticed her, but once my attention was turned to her, I was like, this is the one. Like, this is like everything I've observed about her, in the way she interacts with other people, in the way she interacts with old people who can't do anything for her, with children who can't do anything for her, like the way she handles herself around other people. That's what I want. I want someone who cares more about other people than they do about themselves, because I know I am selfish, and I need someone who is not as selfish as me, because I need someone to help. Like, and I've learned so much about not being selfish by being with her. So I don't know that there was a specific moment, but there was, but once I like asked her out and we went out a couple times, I was like, this is it. And I asked her to marry me 6 months later, and we got married 6 months after that. And we've been together, been married 11 years here in a couple months, and I've never had a single regret or anything. So there wasn't that World of Warcraft moment where I was like, this is the one, this is it.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like very apparent to me that like, yes, I did legitimately love that girl before. And I'm sure that if things had progressed and we got married, I'd be happy, and there would be issues and stuff like that, but wasn't happy. But the fact that happened and like just made me be able to shift my focus, not instantly or anything, but like be able to shift my focus and just realize like, oh, all the things that I felt were lacking before, or all the things that I did like before, like this person has them. And it was just like, it was a slow tsunami, I guess you could say, if there's such a thing. Of like, okay, this is the moment. This is the person. This is the person I'm in love with.
Ben, we were both. I guess we're both after the church girls. That's, both of us.
You don't find them better than the
church
better,
girls.
Or I have some bad experiences with church girls. So
extremes.
Yeah. But no, Ben, something I like that I think is worth bringing up as we go to Colin and Dagan is that the cheesiest thing about falling in love and finding the right person is that I always like really obviously when you're dating someone, you really like them. And it was a little different for me because the other girls I dated, I was always too young. It's like, okay, we can't get married next year or even in 2 years. It's going to be a while. So it's like, that's not even really part of your mind. There's something about when like really early on when I started dating Holly, I was like, yep, this is it. This is the right move.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's good advice when I tell people this or when I've talked to people about relationship stuff. It's just like, for me, it's like when like it's obvious. There's something in your mind that clicks and it's like, yeah, this is the right move. This is the person. This is what makes sense. And that sounds like what was the case for you.
Yeah, with the girl I mentioned before that I dated for a long time, that was like, we were in like 10th or 11th grade, and it was like, okay, well, this girl's smoking hot, and I need somebody to take the prom. So I'm gonna ask, like, and then I started loving her over the years, and as we got older and everything like that. And with my wife, it was like, not I'm looking for someone to marry, but like my mind was much more in the mindset of like, why am I going, if I meet someone and I know I'm not going to marry them, then why bother continue? Like, I'm not that I'm old, but like I'm an adult now. I have a job. Like I want to move towards marriage. If I know something isn't going to work out with somebody, I'm not going to spend 6 or 8 months just to break up with them, Right. So it was very much, it is very much like a, thing, but also it's very much like I don't really believe in that like love at first sight thing, but I'm way closer to it now than I was 10 years ago in believing in that, because like,
you weren't there to mess around.
No, I knew what I wanted.
You were there for business.
Why bother? Why bother messing around? Like, let's get married. Let's pop out a couple kids. Let's just be miserable for the next 50 years, hopefully.
So life is short.
Yeah.
Dig, where are you at on this?
I mean, obviously, I love this topic. This is awesome. Obviously, I have to talk about Helene. I mean, we've been married for 20 years. We've been together for 26, 27 years. And, she's the love of my life. I mean, no mystery there. But I have to say, for this, I'm a romantic. I think everybody knows that. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I kind of live for these kind of things, these mysterious, unexplainable things that make life worth living. I love the idea of head over heels, the one, love at first sight, hit over the head with the proverbial ton of bricks. Like, I love the magic in that, and that could happen, and that the one meant for you is out there. Like, when I think of Helene and I'm growing up on Long Island. She's growing up in suburban Philadelphia. We're only a year apart. We were kind of living our lives in parallel until we came together. It's kind of fascinating to think she was growing up 100 miles away and doing her thing with her family. Did we ever cross paths? Like, I love that whole, the whole movie magic romance thing. But I also love what you guys are talking about, where there are many different paths and many different journeys that lead to love and a successful relationship and all that kind of stuff. And Helene and I's story is kind of the best of both worlds in a way. I'll explain. And I had a lot of, I met Helene I think I was 22 or 23. And I had a lot of relationships leading up to that. And I had fun, and I met a lot of great girls. I met a lot of crappy girls and had crappy relationships and learned about myself and my failings in relationships early on, even being a teenager. And I met a lot of great girls and had great experiences and learned about different types and dated girls from different backgrounds. And some of them became lasting friendships. And, I had a great time. But I do remember a very specific time, a lonely time in college, where I was dating a lot. I was fortunate to be able to meet girls and had enough confidence to have girlfriends, and never really struggled with that. Girls couldn't look at me in high school. But I guess I came into my own somehow in college. But I remember wanting something more. I mean, we know physical attraction is always that initial magnet for, not always, but often that initial magnet for two people. But I remember that very specific time in my life where I was looking for a more meaningful connection. Like, I was really looking for a girl that not only I was physically attracted to, but that I had that deeper thing with, that flavor, that vibe, that connection, that telepathy, the shorthand. Like, I just wanted to kind of go beyond everything I knew at that point. And, I guess I was looking for something to transcend, something to go deeper than that initial attraction. And I remember dating girls, nice girls. Like, I remember dating this one specific girl who went to, I was in Philly at the time. It was kind of cool the way Philly worked out, big college town. But even beyond that, there were like 5 big art schools, and it was almost like a little 5 points type thing. It's like University of the Arts, the Art Institute of Philadelphia, Moore College of Art and Design, the Academy of Fine Arts, and Drexel. And so there was a lot of art students, and there was a lot of, just a lot of cool people to choose from, I think, on all sides. And I remember dating a lot of girls, and I was dating this one dancer, and she was really nice and really cool, and I liked her, and I was attracted to her. And I remember us both being like, but it's just not enough. Like, there's just that certain je ne sais quoi just wasn't there, you know, that spark or whatever. And then, you know, eventually I met Helene through a friend of mine that I met in Philly who kind of opened up my world in Philly to a whole friend group that I wasn't aware of. And Helene was a part of that. But and it was guys and girls and skateboarders and art students and stuff like that. It was this big group of people, like 20 or 30 people that were all friends, and they all had apartments or dorms in a common area in the city. And Helene was part of that, but I never knew her because during the school year, we were all busy at our respective colleges doing our respective majors. And in the summertime, Helene would disappear. She would go down the Jersey Shore to her family shore house. So she was never around when we had free time. So I never knew Helene. And I saw her once sitting on her porch, and I knew her two roommates well, but I didn't know Helene was even another roommate in that building. She was just visiting in the summertime, and she was sitting on the porch. I was like, who is that? You know, she's beautiful. And there was that initial attraction, and she just seemed like my type. And then I thought back, and I was like, no, I've seen this girl 2 times before. I eventually made the connection. My friend Nino had a picture in his house of him and her attending the prom. And I was like, oh my God, that's the girl that Nino went to his prom with. And then I saw her a second time. Nino was in his car. We were on South Street, which is like Philly's Greenwich Village. And Helene was walking, and Nino stopped and pulled over and was talking to her. I was like, oh, that girl's really cute. So when I noticed Helene, it was actually the 3rd time I had seen her. And I was kind of hit over the head with the ton of bricks, right? But it wasn't the first time I saw her. So it was indirect. The other problem was when I met Helene and started talking to her, A, I thought she was out of my league, but I thought I would give it a shot anyway. And B, it turned out that she was dating a friend of a very good friend of mine. My friend Christian had a friend named Frank who was dating Helene at the time. So it was actually kind of fortunate because Helene was probably dating this guy for about a month when I met her. And so we were able to form our relationship around a friendship initially because she was already attached to somebody. And we would hang out, and there was definitely a mutual attraction, but we never got up to any antics or mischief, right? Like, she honored her relationship to this dude. And eventually they broke up. And eventually me and Helene became an item. And that thing that I was looking for just hit right away. Like, I was like, we have that secret sort of shorthand communication. Like, we talk the same language. We have the same sense of humor. It wasn't just a physical attraction. It was a lot deeper. And that became apparent to me really quickly. And that's when I knew that this would be, you know, I thought it would be a lasting relationship, and that we had a really strong foundation to build on. And, you know, it worked out. And you hear things like, I always think a very romantic notion is those high school sweethearts, right? Like the first relationship that these two people ever had. I know a few of these in my life, and they stay together for 50 and they're married for 50 years. You know, I think that's very romantic, but I think taking a journey and getting to a certain place also has an aspect of romance, because in that kind of voyage, you're getting to know yourself and you're getting to know what you were looking for. So I'm not sure if I didn't go through that, you know, if I didn't go through the dating, if I didn't go through the period of feeling like the relationships were shallow and the loneliness that came out of that feeling, like I'm with this person, but I know we're not really connecting. Like, there's not much here of substance. It's just a physical attraction, or we're passing time, you know, we're spending time together to help avert loneliness or whatever. So when I met Helene, I felt like, even though we were young, I was 23, she was 22, I think. Even though we were young, we both had that experience where we got to be with a lot of people. We got to have relationships. We got to have fun, sowing the wild oats, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
and, you know what's crazy? You don't really know if it's going to work out, and you don't really know when things are going to disintegrate, if they're going to disintegrate. Could happen 2 years in, could happen 2 months in, could happen 25 years in. You don't really know. But you kind of, with love, with romance, with relationships, you kind of put yourself on the line. And it's been really one of the most rewarding aspects of my life to kind of have that, and also to make sacrifices on both sides. When I met Helene early on, it was like I knew that she didn't want to, I was an animator. It was like 90% chance have to be on the West Coast. That's where all the animation jobs are. So very early on, it was like, I'm going to be making certain sacrifices in my career to have this relationship. And, it's all been worth it. You know what I mean? So I've been very lucky in that regard, where it's like, I can't even think of another path I could have gone down. It's unthinkable to me. And I think that's how that's how you really know when you're about to turn 50 years old, that you made choices that were the right ones, hopefully.
Yeah. I think that just something about what you said about the idea is that when you find the right person, that the sacrifice is easy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even really feel like a sacrifice in the moment, because it's you want to do it, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well said.
I wrote down a bunch of notes here as everyone was talking, and one of the things I like to examine in this regard is, I guess, this idea of how love has evolved, at least for me. I grew up and went to college and then lived in San Francisco for 10 years in the games industry, which I would consider suspended animation for one's social evolution and kind of time moving forward at a normal adult rate. I've joked on this show many times, but it's totally true. Like, there are, we used to say there's no kids in San Francisco. There's no God in San Francisco. It's just 20 and 30 something year olds that work for massive tech companies with mostly more money than the average person, living a somewhat hedonistic life. And I did it. I mean, I lived there. I would go out to drink multiple times a week for years, and everything was through that more, in other words, juvenile lens. And so the relationships that I found myself in at that time, two in particular, because I look at my life as having really 5 serious girlfriends, and I'm 38 now, and now I'm engaged for the first time. So hopefully the only time. And but my high school girlfriend is the only one of them that I still talk to and get along with. And I don't really actually talk to her very much anymore, but we're friendly. We didn't have a falling out. We still remain friends. She's back on Long Island. She's married. She has 3 kids, who I think one of them just went to college this year, which is fucking scary. I just can't even believe
Wow.
that. So shout out to her, Megan. She was great. And we just were on different wavelengths. I went to college, and there I had my college girlfriend, who was the first girl that I really considered myself truly in love with. I loved Megan, but I didn't really know what that meant. It's very much driven at that time by hormones. She was a figure skater. That's how I met her. I met her at one of my hockey practices because she was just waiting for like a ride or something like that. And so that was just a chance encounter. And I started dating this girl in college that lived down the hall from me, and we were together on and off throughout college. And she was the first person that I loved, but she broke my heart. And like, she was also the first person that like totally obliterated me multiple times. And we haven't talked I was actually thinking about this. I think in March or April, I think it's April, it will be 15 years since we even spoke to each other. And we just broke up and just never spoke after that. And in hindsight, that wasn't love. I don't know what that was. That was comfort. I think we were really good friends. Sometimes I think back and think it would be like, it's sad we can't even reminisce about, or wouldn't reminisce about, all of the really fun times that we had, because we had a lot of fun together, and I have a lot of fond memories from that era. But it just wasn't right. It was off. That's, I think, the way it goes when you're young. You find the wrong people. It's nothing to do with the value of the other person or whatever. Even though I was really hurt in those situations, it's like, I don't know, we were kids, and I'm not sure it's so serious. And then when I went to San Francisco, I had 2 relationships. The next 2 relationships I had in a row were with people from my past. And this is interesting. I dated a girl that I went to high school with, And then I dated a girl that I went to college with. And long after I was in high school and long after I was in college. And those were what I would consider like the two real adult relationships that I was in before I met Micah. And I think that in the first one, I think that I was in love with her at one time, but I think that we were young and kind of scrappy and trying to find our way. And we were both from Long Island and we went to high school together and we had like this really interesting bond, but I think we realized over time we were totally incompatible with each other. And I knew that at the end of that relationship, I really started to have actually a lot of resentment towards her. And I knew that it was time to go because what specifically happened was we founded Kind of Funny out of my apartment in San Francisco, and she lived with us. She lived with us for the first 6 months or so that we were doing Kind of Funny, and she couldn't take it anymore. Like she was like, I can't. And I understand it's like everyone is there all the time. Like Nick, Tim, Greg lives there. Nick and Tim are there all the time. Kevin starts coming over all the time. Everyone's working at it. I'm like, this is the way it goes. Like we're launching something. Don't you understand that this is really important to me? Just like I stood by you when you went to, to get your PhD and did all these kinds of things. I thought it was kind of like, and I felt kind of at the time betrayed. I mean, in hindsight, I understand a lot more of her position, but at the time I was like, this is a complete betrayal that you're bailing on me, and she moved to wine country and we dated for, I don't know, probably 5 more months or 4 more months. And I just knew when she moved there that it was over. And I think she realized it was over too, and she had different goals. And around that time, my ex-girlfriend came into my life, and that was painful too. And I think I have this very nostalgic, obviously, this very I don't know, this wistful kind of like, oh, star-crossed, like so interesting. Not that I've never believed in the one either. I feel like that's silly. I feel like there are probably, and Mike and I were talking about this recently. I'm like, the reality is that Micah could meet many men that would love to be with Micah for all reasons, not only physically, but because she's awesome. I don't believe that I'm the one for her. I believe I'm very lucky that we encountered each other when we did. And so I guess what I'm saying from this kind of more heady perspective is when I got out of that last relationship, which really fucked me up, like on a personal level, I think that was obvious to the audience. And I tried my best to kind of like fight through it, but it was really difficult. It was really hurtful because I kind of thought that was going to be the end of the line for me. And when I got out of that relationship, I had a rebound here in Virginia, but then I told myself that I was going to, and I think rebounding is important, by the way, and we can have a topic about that some other time. But
that's great. Yeah.
But I think that after that, and I think people that know me will earnestly know, I was like, I'm done. Maybe something will happen in the future, but I have plenty of money. I own a company. I am with my family. I don't need this fucking bullshit anymore. And I was literally people ask me like, why did you move to the middle of the suburbs? You don't drive, you don't go anywhere. And I'm like, dude, I did it on purpose. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't want to be around anyone or do anything. I needed to be in a neighborhood so I felt like normal. And it's like, oh, there's the neighbor going to work. And here's let's talk to this guy mowing his lawn and all. I needed that kind of reality in my life. But in terms of relationships and love, I was like, I'm done with this. I just don't know. And I know that sounds dramatic and many a person has said that, but I meant it. I really did. I was like, I'm just not doing this anymore. And then Micah came into my life. And I think the way I look at it personally, I guess having more experience than you guys, having dated more over a longer period of time, is I always felt that love was kind of a push and pull. You give and you take, but in a more transactional sort of way. And I felt like that's why things always felt wrong. It's because the balance wasn't quite right. And I'm like, I'm always trying to satisfy this balance and trying to worry about another person and ingesting all of their problems and all of their worries and just taking it all on me, but having what I felt like was like very little reciprocity the other direction in multiple situations. And then in meeting Micah and getting to know her and then dating her and all this time we've been together now is the reason I knew that I was in love and the way love evolved for me over time, and that I was pleased that it went down the way it did, was it's good. And she actually said something profound to me not too long ago. So it's funny that this comes up. She said something along the lines of like, we both have to get used to things just being okay. We're so used to being in imperfect situations trying to satisfy this ideal that can't be satisfied in that situation, not because of necessarily the fault of the other person per se, but just because the chemistry is wrong, and chemistry and timing and all these things are everything. And the reason I know, it's like, this is, now I know, I think I've been in love before, but love has evolved for me that in the way I'm in love now, I've never been in love before. And I think I was very eager to not date myself. In fact, if you go back and listen to old shows, I would always say I am looking for the exact opposite of myself. I don't want to be with myself. But that was a mistake. And it doesn't mean that I'm dating like a mirror image of myself. What I'm saying is like, I'm dating a person that plays games, that is nerdy, that understands those things, that understands me. But also there's like more fundamental things about the caring and the attention to detail that makes the other person feel okay that I appreciated so much. And I know it came up recently on another show, I think, but when we bought our engagement ring for her, we did it together. And I remember having these conversations with two other women I was with, where it's like, well, maybe we'll get engaged one day. And I would express, I'm really scared about buying the ring. Like, we should do it together so that you can pick out what you want. And knowing me and my OCD and my fucking just whatever, they would still be like, oh no, like I want, it's got to be a surprise and all these kinds of things. And it's like, okay. But then I meet this woman who's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And that little thing was really meaningful and important to me, because I was like, wow, you understand how much stress you just removed from my entire existence by saying that. It might not be perfect because you're not going to get the pop of the surprise, but you're going to be surprised when I ask you, and it's going to be the exact ring you want. And because you picked it out. And she understood. And that was a symbolic thing for me, above and beyond just the engagement itself and the coming nuptials and getting married and all of that. Was the symbolism that like ring meant more to me on that, because it was like a symbol of you getting me in some way, and yeah, so the idea of just being okay and also the idea of forever. I wanted to throw this in there too. I think in hindsight, and I'm sure other people can relate to this, even in my long-term relationship. So it's like, yeah, we'll get married one day and all this. There was always this escape hatch in my mind where I was always like, I don't have to actually be in this forever. I would never actually like materially think about it or say it aloud or anything like that. But I always felt like I was like, I'm going to probably not get at being this forever. I don't know how that's going to happen. I'd see a cute girl on the bus or something, and you're just thinking, you'd be like, you're not going to be in this unhappy situation or whatever forever, or this stasis forever. And then you move on with your day. And I don't have thoughts like that at all anymore. I embrace the finality of it. We have it's a Larry David joke from Curb Your Enthusiasm about till death do you part. And how he says he wants it, Cheryl wants it to be forever, and he wants it to be till death do us part.
Yeah.
In their renewed vows or whatever. And so I joke about that all the time, but it really is forever. And they're equivalent. And I'm totally all about it. It's totally great. That to me is love. Like, it's the comfort, the balance, and I just truly think she's a wonderful person, which I think we all share with our significant others. Is like, I just think she takes care of me, and I appreciate her, so yeah, that to me is, so when did I know? I don't know, specifically, but I think it's a confluence of things that just solidified, like, everything's right. In my mind, in previous relationships, it'd be like, well, this is right, and this is right, and this is right, but this is wrong, and this is wrong. And you'd be like, well, maybe it's a little better good than bad or something, but I don't feel that way at all anymore. It just seems like it's all good. Yeah.
It's funny you're talking about how she takes care of you. And there's always this traditional idea. It's like, oh, the man takes care of the woman. I don't know about you guys, but like, I always need taken care of by Holly, like all the time. And that's, I don't know, maybe that's the maturing moment, or what you realize. It's like, you need taken care of, and you need to take care of somebody. Like, right. There's that I guess it kind of gets into that reciprocal relationship that Colin mentioned, but
Yeah.
just this idea of like, it's super easy for me to want to take care of Holly. It's easy for me to want to sacrifice for her. And it's great because she feels the exact same way. Like that. It's like you said, Colin, those little things that's like, you get it. You've made this easy. And it's not that when you're married, everything is easy, or even in a, strong relationship that everything's easy all the time. That's definitely not the case. But it's goes into even just how you deal with the times that aren't always good. Is different. It's totally different. And so, yeah.
I'm sorry. Was I interrupting someone?
I heard Justin McElroy say, and I'm sure he didn't come up with it, but I heard him say it one time, probably a decade ago. He said, a lot of people think that relationships are about each person given 50%.
Oh,
He's
absolutely.
like, no, that's wrong. Everybody should give 51%. You should strive to make your minimum 51%. You should always try to be outdoing the other one. And of course, there's plenty of times that all of us don't do more for the other, try to do more for the other one than they're doing for us. But like, if everybody's trying to give more than the other person, instead of just meeting you where they're at or where you're at, then, that's what really, I think, makes relationships work, is when people are trying to give more than the other person, trying to outdo the other person, while understanding they're still not doing everything.
Right.
They're still getting something. But like, never just being okay with giving someone back exactly what you're getting, like always trying to go the extra mile. And I think like, if you can do that, and it's easy, and not easy in the sense that it's not hard, but it's easy for you to want to do that, then, that's, I feel like that's a good relationship, when you're not just like, oh, well, they did this, so therefore I'm not going to do that. Or they acted like this towards me, so I can act the same way. Like, I get into those mindsets sometimes. I think that's human nature.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's easy to forget that you're not just trying to be on equal terms with them. It's not transactional. It's when in love, it's about relationship and about trying to do better for the other person than they've done for you. Even if they've been great to you, you still want to always try to do more. And that's something that I frequently fail at. And I think everyone frequently fails at, but it's a good ideal.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. I mean, that's reciprocation. And Colin said it earlier too, where relationships are really a two-way street. If you think of it that way, I don't know if it was my dad or some other guru in my life told me this, but it's really true. And it goes along with what you just said, Ben. If in a relationship, for a healthy relationship to take place, if both people are bringing in 100% of themselves, or if each person is 100% solid as their own person, and then they come in and form a relationship, that 100%, you can't, in other words, you can't be 50% of yourself, or 50% happy, or 50% satisfied, or 50%, sort of accepting of where your position is in life, and the other person can't be 50, and then you come in and to form 100. It doesn't work that way. 50 and 50 doesn't equal 100 in that case. 100 and 100 equals 100. So, you both have to be, and that whole idea of like, sometimes person A is going to fall short, and person B is going to have to pick up the slack, and vice versa. But I'll tell you, so I was just talking to a good friend of mine on text yesterday, and she was talking about relationships and everything. And I told her, I said, look, I'll tell you the truest cliche that I've ever heard in my life, and it definitely applies, and it's 100% true. The glue of a good relationship is humor and laughter. If you could have that, I know that it's going to be okay. Like Helene and I do that thing where we hide on each other and scare the fuck out of each other in the house, which by far, like, I'll tell you, is coming to loggerheads. Like, I'm going to get a heart attack. And it's getting bad where I'm plotting like be in her car in the morning and stuff like that. Somebody's going to get hurt. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we're laughing. You know what I mean? We're keeping each other. It's laughter. It's humor. There's problems. There's, money, the kids, health, careers. There's so much to worry about. Right. But at the end of the day, if you could just laugh and, just laugh with each other, You know what I mean? Then I know then everything's on the up and up. You could still do that. Bad times, like Dustin said, good times, all of that. It's never easy. I don't think relationship, even the easy times, that, I think about this constantly at my age. Like Helene and I are entering the time in our lives where her parents are a little older than our mom and dad, but our parents are getting old. And, God forbid, I hope they live for another 30 years, but we don't, who knows? So you always think like the adversity, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be hard times, there's going to be tests. So you got to kind of always kind of just celebrate the good times and prepare yourselves for the darker times. And like Dustin said, you got to be able to get through all of it. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding than just giving 100% of yourself. That's another thing with relationships. Like if you're constantly introspective and working on yourself, I think of like podcasting. I'm always trying to get better at podcasting. I always try to get better at being a dad, being an animator. Why shouldn't the same thing apply to being a lover?
Oh,
being a lover. I mean, my marks are pretty high. I don't know how much better I could get at that, but you know what I mean? Like apply that sensibility to just being a husband, and, I'm very fortunate because I will say in all honesty, and this is all brown nosery aside, like Helene is a much better wife than I am a husband. I'm moody, I'm creative. So I could be, a pain in the ass. I could get testy, get impatient. Like she's as close to a saint and she's not perfect, but she's as close to a saint as most people I've ever met. So I've really worked out. Like I feel very fortunate in our situation. The scales might be a little tipped in her favor, but I try. I always try to get better, do better. And I think as long as you're doing that, at the end of the day, you could sleep well at night, like anything.
He came from behind.
Oh. Dagan, you were mentioning about
Sorry. Well, I was doing a Star Wars impression.
Yeah.
It's the next one.
It was good.
Thank you.
You were mentioning about laughing and humor and stuff. I feel like for Holly, I imagine you and I are in the same boat, and maybe for Ben and Colin as well, but Holly is the fortunate and unfortunate recipient of me. Like I am always performing for Holly. I'm always trying to say something funny or do something funny for her constantly. And you know what? I feel like my ratio of hits to misses is getting a lot better as we get, as I understand her humor. I don't know though, because I'm starting to get into the dad age range where, maybe that's going to, though it couldn't prove because Holly likes dad humor, but it's hard to say.
I feel like Dustin, just piece of quick advice. And I know for me, you may be different, but I'm used to growing up in my family. Everybody likes to laugh at me. That's just always been a thing. So if you could I've learned to laugh at myself many years ago. So everybody, if you're laughing at yourself, people are happy to join in. So,
sure.
If I do something or say something stupid, I'm not talking about dad joke. I'm just talking about being Dagan. As long as if I could earnestly, authentically laugh at myself, Helene's happy to join in on that and pile on. So that's always a thing to just kind of, just break the tension. If you guys are having kind of fixing on an argument or something, that's a nice way to just say, listen, I could be the butt of the joke.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. Dagan, we'll go to you.
Okay.
And we'll end with mine. So talk to me about your topic today.
All right, you guys, you were warned. And I can't wait to get these takes because there's going to be very specific geographic takes. Now, listen, I'm going to set this up for you guys. I'm going to let you go like a turbo. Okay. Car stuff, guys. Like pizza itself. I said this in the email. It's a deceptively simple topic. That's what kind of fascinates me about it because look, you just have the tomato sauce, the cheese, the dough, crust, maybe some toppings, but it's so much more complicated than that. That's what I love about this. And a lot of this conversation is going to be about where you're from. I get that. But we all have our own personal tastes, our allegiances. This is a key food we're talking about. So we have our hot takes. This is a divisive topic. So let's argue about it. Let's just get it going. This is not a topic I feel like this is not a topic for diplomacy. This is not a topic for the faint of heart. This is something I put in here tailor-made to invite opinion. So don't pull your punches. Now, I'll just, in a setting it up for you guys capacity, there's so many different ways we could take this, right? There's so many different ways we could go with this one. And I'll leave it to you guys, again, to go off in whatever direction you like. So are we talking about favorite hometown pizzerias? Are we talking about what constitutes bad pizza? We all have an opinion on that. That should be fun. The various styles of pizza known throughout the U.S. There's a lot that I wasn't even aware of before yesterday. This should be interesting. Are we dishing about the big pizza chains? The Domino's, the Pizza Huts, the Papa John's, the Sparrows, Little Caesars, whatever. Are we getting into toppings, terrible toppings, good toppings, favorite toppings, whatever? Are we going down the supermarket frozen food aisle? Are we talking about the store-bought pizzas, DiGiorno's, Elio's, all that kind of crap? And I figure somewhere in here we got to make fun of Chicago deep dish. That's got to be a thing.
Oh my
But
God.
I'll start here, and then I'm going to pass it over to you guys.
Please.
And I'll keep it brief.
Please.
When I was a kid, growing up in New York, in the Long Island suburbs, I didn't even like pizza. On takeout night, I was always rooting for Chinese or hamburgers. Now, we weren't sophisticated enough to do Indian food yet. I didn't really discover Japanese food and sushi until I moved to California in my early 20s. So it was really like, we're doing takeout tonight. Oh, please, Chinese, please, burgers. Pizza was really commonplace to me. Boring. I didn't care for it. It wasn't until I moved out of New York and lived in various other places, Philly, I lived in Connecticut for a while, lived in LA for a while. It wasn't until I moved away and witnessed the horrors and the smoke and mirror show and the unacceptable excuses that tried to pass themselves off as pizza in other places outside of New York, that when I returned to Long Island, I was like, oh my God, why didn't I recognize how essential and important Long Island, specifically thin crust pizza is, specifically Ragtime, Tony's, and Vincent's. We'll probably get into that at some point. But as an adult, I love pizza. As a kid, if we were getting pizza, I begged my parents to get me a meatball parm sub because I just was over it. Like, I just didn't appreciate it at all. And then I realized, like, pizza's a great topic. You can learn a lot about somebody, through their preference for pizza. You can learn where they're from, what their taste preferences are, and all of that. So I figured I'd throw it off to you guys. Talk about what you like. I'm going to pass it off to Ben first. And I'm sure we might get a Pittsburgh perspective. And listen, Pittsburgh, we mentioned it early in the show. Good food town. One of my great friends went to graduate school at Carnegie Mellon when I was in college in Philly. So we would, every month I was on the Greyhound to Pittsburgh. I mean, I spent 4 years going back and forth to Pittsburgh. So I got to witness a lot of Pittsburgh and good food. But I can't wait to get the perspectives on pizza. We got to hate on some of the pizzas out there. There's a lot. There's really a lot to this conversation. And the other thing is that I want to know from you guys, if you could put it into your takes, it seems like a very American topic to me. You know, like you think of Italy, but then not really. Like the United States really leveraged pizza and then apparently took it in many different directions. But I'll start with you, Ben. Give me your pizza hot takes.
Well, real quick, I want to say, you were saying there about everybody loves pizza. I'm thinking about there's a part in The Office where Michael Scott like messes up the warehouse and he buys everybody pizza and he goes, pizza, it's the great equalizer. Rich people like pizza, poor people like pizza, white people like pizza, black people like pizza. And of course, then he has to figure out if black people actually like pizza or not.
Oh, yeah. And then like, there's the shot where he's nodding.
Yeah.
So good.
But yeah, I mean, my perspective on pizza is if you call it pizza, I will probably at least enjoy it. I may not like it or love it, but it will be sustaining to me. But I still know the difference between this is a good pizza and this is a bad pizza. And this is a style of pizza I like and this is a style of pizza I will prefer. But if you put it in front of me, I'm probably going to eat it. Now, I know I'm a big guy and people probably think I eat a lot. I really don't eat that much. My wife is 5'9", 120 pounds. She can out-eat me at anything. And when it comes to pizza, when we first started dating, got married, I'd be like, oh, we should get a pizza. She's like, okay, yeah, get two. And I was like, there's two of us. Like, and she's like, yeah, I'll eat one myself. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Nice.
She loves any kind of pizza. If it's pizza, it's about childhood memories and convenience for her. So if it's Little Caesars, it's just as good to her as the finest, whatever pizza your preference is that you could find. Like she doesn't care. She just wants pizza. So for me, I don't know, because I'm not terribly picky on pizza, although I know what I like and what I don't like, it's hard for me to get involved in the pizza debate. But what I will say is that like there is such a thing as too many ingredients. We're talking about the Chicago deep dish pizza.
Oh.
Don't get me wrong, Chicago deep dish, whatever you want to call it, the soup that's on top of some bread, it's amazing, it tastes great, but I don't know that that's pizza. Similarly, Little Caesars, you've got some really chewy, nasty dough, some red sauce that'll give you the worst heartburn you've ever had in your life, and the shittiest government cheese that's ever been invented. That's still pizza. It's still good. I'm still going to be okay with eating that pizza, but it's not, it's not pizza.
Dude, when I was poor, Little Caesars was like
absolutely
a fucking
Shit
savior.
slaps.
Yeah, when I was
Little Caesars now is $7
for
for their $5 hot and ready, which is not
yeah,
accurate.
that's the inflation hot and ready.
Inflation,
Yeah.
man.
Thanks, Obama.
But I was paying $5 in like 2007, 2008, so it's kind of reasonable. You would expect it to go up a couple bucks at this point.
And in like 2000, late 90s, it was pizza. You'd buy one $5 pizza and get a second one for free at Little
That's
Caesars.
insane.
So, I mean, Little Caesars really has just screwed us all if you think about it. So,
Yeah. The economics.
yeah, the economics of Little Caesars. But yeah, so I like, in town here, there's a place called Tanny's, and they have really good pizza. They have, your traditional style pizza. They have thin crust. They have Sicilian pizza. It's an authentic, like he's an actual Italian dude. Although the worst pizza I've ever had in my entire life was in Italy. So
I believe it.
Whether or not that means anything, I don't know. But
Wow.
just because it's Italian doesn't mean it's a good pizza, right?
Where in
We
Italy,
know
Ben?
it was in, where's the David statue? Florence.
Oh, in
Florence.
It was in
Florence.
Florence, yeah.
Okay.
I also had pizza in Rome, and I expected it to be bad, but it was not as bad as the stuff in Florence.
If you
But,
ask like what town are you thinking about in Italy, I'm just gonna every answer is gonna be Rome.
yeah,
That's probably really the only place that comes to mind.
I've only been like 4 towns. I say only, that's a lot, but I've been like 4 places in Italy, and I had pizza in all of them, of course, because you have to. Just you gotta have everything else too, but you gotta try pizza.
Isn't it weird? Wait, just as a quick aside, a tangent. Isn't it strange that tomatoes come from the New World and then they're so closely identified with Italian cooking?
Yeah.
I've always found that really
that is
interesting.
strange.
Like,
I know I heard this at one point, but was it Italians who were already in America that created pizza? Really?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that pizza is like an American thing that's exported, and I think I don't know if it's quite as anthropological, but I think there might be some tether between pasta and like literally Marco Polo's trip to China
Wow.
as
That
well.
makes sense.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a we are Italian. Dagan and I, it's a little scrappy. We're a scrappy people, stealing things, holding things for ourselves. Listen, here's what I'm going to say about pizza real quick. I agree with you, Ben, 100%. There's a place and a time for all pizza, in my opinion. But I am snobbish about pizza, and given choice, I'm going to always choose good pizza. And just because I'm eating it and putting and stuffing it down my fat gullet doesn't mean that I think it's necessarily any good,
Correct.
So yeah, at the lower end is Little Caesars, all those kinds of things. I mean, even frozen pizza. I think frozen pizza is pretty good. It is what it is. But there are certain pizzas that I find egregious. And Dagan, I think you're right in that I liked pizza growing up. And I've told the story on previous shows about how I used to take the cheese off my pizza when I was a kid. And then I accidentally ate a piece of cheese pizza, like just wasn't thinking about it. That like would just bit into it without. And then I realized I was like, oh my God, this is so good. I was probably in like 4th grade or something when that happened.
I remember when you used to take it off. Yeah.
It would just be like, just because I didn't want to be a dickhead. It's like path of least resistance. We're getting pizza tonight. It's like, okay, I guess I'll eat bread and sauce. That's
Yeah.
what I'm gonna have. But it's cheese. It's almost the same thing. But upon that moment, I came to like pizza more and more. But it wasn't until I left New York that I really came to appreciate how you could just trip over good pizza where we're from. And I don't know why that is. I know a lot of people say it's the water. I know a lot of people say but it's so strange because I've straight up been places for years where it's like, where is the pizza that is good? So in Boston, when I went to Northeastern, there were 4 pizza places around us. U-Hop, which was University House of Pizza, B-Hop, which was Boston House of Pizza, Cappy's 2, because it was the second Cappy's, the other one was at BU, and then there was New York Pizza. And New York Pizza, maybe not surprisingly, ended up being the best, but really none of them were right. And in fact, we used to say pizza and put quotes when we talk about it.
Yep.
And I think one of the differences, and I'm not trying to, no scoring towards the Greek people, just a thing I've noticed. A lot of the places in Boston were Greek owned. I felt like we were getting almost a different pizza. And to me, it felt very greasy. And I don't know, it was off for me. And then going to San Francisco, it's like, holy shit, where is the pizza? And there's, the North End or it's North Beach in San Francisco is the Italian part. The North End in Boston is the Italian part. And even there, you can get good pizza, but it's more artisanal style pizza. I really like by the slice pies, like at Ragtime, which was the place that we grew up with that I love, that closed down, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. And I don't I'm a toppings guy. I love sausage and onions. I love pepperoni, that kind of stuff. But on New York pizza, I just want it straight up. I think that the toppings come in where you're trying to kind of give it a little something.
Yeah.
But real New York pizza, in my opinion, doesn't need it. You can now, if you want to get crazy with it, you get the thin slice sausage. I mean, that's awesome, right? On there, you get meatballs on there, maybe, but you don't need to do that. And that wasn't even really in my repertoire of orders until I left New York. And I was like, well, this pizza kind of sucks, so I'm going to eat it, of course, but we're going to put sausage and onion on it as well.
Needs something.
And then I'll say this about Chicago style pizza. I acknowledge that there are 2 Chicago style pizzas, right? There's tavern style pizza, which is also a Chicago style pizza, and it's really good. Tavern style pizza is awesome. And that's more of like a thin crust, but think Sicilian style pizza, but thin crust, basically. And with the real Chicago style pizza, deep dish pizza, I also think that's good. There's a chain in San Francisco called Patchy's that I really loved. And we used to go there quite often. But it's not pizza. And I don't know that anyone really disputes that. You eat it with a fork and a knife. No, I've never seen a single person ever eat a Chicago style pizza with their hands. It's not something you do.
That's crazy.
So you're eating a pie of some sort, like you would eat pot pie or shepherd's pie.
It's pot pie. That's what it is.
Right, exactly. So it is good. And then one of the things, and it is the move. Pizza crust and honey go together really well. I encourage people to try this. Like you get a little bit of the remnants of the tomato sauce on the crust. That's it. So like the pizza's gone, you have the crust, just a little bit of tomato sauce. Just dip it in a little honey and eat it.
Oh man,
I'm telling you right now,
rubbed off on you. Look at you.
Yeah, this is apparently actually a Chicago style invention as well. Yeah, because they would eat with a fork and a knife, and then they would pick up the crust and dip it in the honey.
Interesting.
As I understand it. Yeah.
Kyle, this is my problem with deep dish pizza. It's not that it's not good. I do always think of it like pot pie, but for me, I think it's the way we grew up. Pizza was a binging food. Like there's just something cathartic, something satisfying in eating more than one slice. I don't want a single slice of pizza to be my meal. You know what I mean? Like it was just always wrong-headed to me. It was less the physical appearance or the style or thick compared to thin. It was always more of like the dynamic. Like I want to have 3 or 4 slices of pizza and a couple of beers. I don't want to feel so full after having one
it's a belly
slice
bomb,
of pizza. I remember I didn't even know. And let me tell you something. Philadelphia is I love it. It's my city. I love this place, but pizza, not good here. And suburb city, look, Philadelphia is a great food city. They rest on their laurels with the cheesesteaks. That's okay. Cheesesteaks are wonderful. The pizza's fucking terrible here. I mean, the best pizza place I go to is like 15 miles away and it's mediocre. And that's like, I can't even eat It's like it's 100 miles from here. Seriously, like why? What is the magic? And I think Colin was saying the water, the Brooklyn water, and everything like that. All kinds of theories around floating out there. I think it's the years, the decades and decades of family heritage. These are family businesses with family recipes passed down. Now, a lot of the problem's been solved because of New York transplants all over the country. They go down to Tennessee, they go to California, they go to the Carolinas, they go to New England. And we have one bagel place here that's very authentic Long Island bagels.
Yeah, I like that place.
And so I know that dynamic does exist where you can do it. You could sort of uproot and go somewhere else and do what is done in your place of origin. So I know it's not impossible, but for pizza, seemingly it's impossible. It's amazing how bad it is here. But that was always my problem with deep dish when I discovered it, probably moving to college and I probably discovered deep dish in all fairness at like Pizzeria Uno. Like it wasn't like a mom and pop pizzeria. So maybe I have an unfair bias towards deep dish. But that was always the thing. Like just call it's like Transformers versus it's like Michael Bay Transformers versus actual Takara Transformers. Like just call it something else. It doesn't have to be called pizza.
It's like Legos versus Mega Blocks.
Yes, exactly.
They're not the same thing.
Here's the thing, though. Okay, not that I'm not some kind of deep dish defender, but if deep dish is a pizza, then why are we calling regular pizzas pies? That doesn't make any sense to me either. It's not a pie. When I think of a pie, I think of like an apple pie. That's a pie. Or a chicken pot pie or something.
It's so funny you say that because I remember being in San Francisco and being like, all right, so you want to get like a few pies, like talking to some people, and someone was like, pie? What are you talking about? And I'm like, are you a fucking idiot?
Yeah, I hate that. I understand what people mean. It's a thing. I just think it's dumb. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's the alliteration or something. Like, I don't know. That's
a pizza
what else
pie.
could you call it? Just pizza. Pizza.
Yeah, just pizza. Now, to weigh in on I don't know. You know what's funny, Dagan, is that you mentioned about this being contentious, but I think we've all kind of come to somewhat the same conclusion in some ways, in that for me, pizza is nearly always something to be celebrated. And it's rough for me when pizza elitism comes in. People are like, oh, that's not real pizza. Shut the fuck up. Who made you the authority on pizza? You know what I mean? Now, I think there are some people that maybe have more authority than others. Like we're talking about this deep dish thing. I don't want to weigh in the waters too much. I've not been to Chicago. I've never had an authentic. I've had some stuff around here that claims to be Chicago deep dish, but I can't verify its validity as deep dish, right? So I don't want to wade in those waters too much. But I don't know. It frustrates me, and it's particularly difficult for Ben and I because here in Western PA, like I said, in Butler, south of or north of Pittsburgh, it's we don't have very many good options when it comes to local pizza. We have some stuff. Ben mentioned Tawny's, and they have some good stuff, and there's a couple places locally every once in a while that I may check out. But I've had a lot of I've had more negative experiences with local pizza than I have had chains.
Oh.
And so I'm a chain pizza defender. Now, here's the thing. I'm all about shopping local, going to local restaurants. In fact, I almost never, outside of fast food, I almost never go to. I don't go to chain sit-down restaurants. Very rarely. So it's a bit of a, what's that?
What is that place? Eat and Go, right?
Eden Park.
Or Eden Park, yeah.
They're a local chain.
It's a local chain, but
yeah, I like that place.
But there is still more local. Yeah, it's somewhere in between.
That place is pretty good.
Eden Park's cool.
Yeah, Eden Park.
So if I'm ordering pizza, I'm going to PJ's. I'm hitting up Papa John's. Always, pretty much always. Now, sometimes I used to go to Domino's. I got a couple bad, not like bad pizzas, but like ones that it's like, this is like cut, and there's one that's like a tiny little slice, or like maybe the cheese is totally shifted to one side. Or dude, the worst is when you get a pizza and it's the amount of crust. You're like, this is not right. This is like 3 inches of crust. And then just a center of cheese. I can't stand that either. And so Domino's did me dirty a few times. But Papa, I'm not, no kind of political aspect. I know that there's the thing about it, racist pizza. I mean, I don't know.
Forgot about that.
It is what it is. Papa John's is where I go. It's what I like. And I'm not saying it's the best pizza. I'm definitely not saying that.
It
But
comes with a
it's
pepper,
been-
right, or something like that. Doesn't it come with like some sort of?
Yeah, I never eat that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
It's the best part
Yeah.
of the pizza.
Whoa, best part.
I like your
Yeah.
honesty, Dustin. I like it.
Yeah. Well, here's like I've had some really, really awesome pizza, particularly Ben. Ben and I have had some amazing pizza together. And in fact, I want to say, Ben, tell me if I'm off base here. Some of the best pizza I've ever had was in Boston at this little kind of, I don't want to say hole in the wall because that makes it sound kind of dingy, but it was on Salem Street. And I looked it up to make sure I got it right. It's Ernesto's Pizza. It's this place that Ben and I discovered when we were at PAX East, just kind of wandering around looking for a place to eat. Just this little place where you can order a pizza, by the slice. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
To the point that in every trip after that, Ben and I made it a point to go to Ernesto's Pizza.
Oh, cool.
And ironic, when we were talking about pizza with Maddie at some point, it's like, yeah, there's this place in Boston I really like that's kind of like on this alleyway. He's like, is it Ernesto's? And Maddie also knew about this place as well. So that was kind of
Interesting.
cool.
And
But
like all over their walls, there's like pictures of celebrities and stuff. And we literally just like got dropped off in an Uber or something to go somewhere. We were like, we got to eat. Let's find the nearest pizza place. And literally we found like apparently the best pizza place in Boston, I guess.
That's awesome.
It's
I love
really
that.
near, Colin, you would know this probably, the Green Dragon Tavern.
Yeah.
This, historical landmark,
Yep.
whatever. But it's like really near that. So it's in like that old part of the city.
That's where the revolutionaries used to gather.
Mhm.
Plot.
I got to make this, I'll make it a little contentious though. And maybe not to us, but for our audience listening. If you want to start getting fucky with the toppings, I'm not going to get mad. I'll let you do what you want to do. If you want to put the pineapple on there, I think you're fucked. But I'll allow it.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
fucking weird, dude.
Are we
It's
4 for
fucking
4 on
weird.
that? Pineapple, no? Ben, no
Oh my God,
pineapple?
no way, man.
I will not order it, but I will eat it.
Yeah, I'd eat it.
Okay.
I'd eat it.
See, I saw a video. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was that guy on YouTube, like World's Best Food Show, or I'm trying to remember. It's this guy. It's really popular YouTube food show where this guy goes all over the world. But he did one about, I think, pizza in like New York or something. And he went to this place that did this exotic, and they had a Big Mac pizza.
Oh,
Where it was like ground beef, and they had this Big Mac sauce. And they even put like buns
I
on
don't
top of the
Gratuitous.
pizza.
I just don't
I'm
know
like,
about this.
I'm like, no,
You don't
no,
need to
no,
do
no,
that.
no, no.
You don't need to do
this,
Stop.
I understand sacred pizza is it's great because there's different ways you can make it, different styles, different toppings. We got to stick within a set parameters, okay? We can't be getting too far out there. You're playing with fire.
Mhm.
And enough is enough. Now, I'm not saying a barbecue chicken pizza, I wouldn't want just that. But if someone orders that, you have a
That's like
slice
some
or something.
California pizza kitchen shit that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
California came up with all this: avocado, asparagus, arugula, artichoke,
Sure.
like all the A's, right? Like that. Like we'll just put anything on
Balsamic
pizza.
vinegar.
That's
Oh, yeah.
California, and
Oh,
I love
totally,
you,
dude.
California, but
Yeah.
that's fucked.
Yeah,
Dustin,
you can go
I think
a little too far. Good.
something you and I have talked about recently and enjoyed together recently in our relationship, apparently, is we got to talk about the Aldi and Walmart frozen pizzas.
Yeah.
And not
wait a
like-
second.
Oh,
we're
hell
not-
yeah.
We're not talking about DiGiorno or whatever the other ones that all advertise on TV.
Yeah.
We're talking about this thing literally says Aldi on the box. And it's not, you're not going to compare it to most even chain pizzas. You're definitely not going to compare it to your local places or your world famous places.
Yeah.
But they're like, $6 or $8.
Yeah, store brand.
They're gigantic.
Sure.
And you do have to take them home and cook them yourself, which, takes all the magic out of getting a pizza. Because I think pizza is mostly about convenience, which is why it's like a
great
quintessential
point.
American thing.
Great point.
But Dustin, these cheap store, Aldi/Walmart pizzas that we've been talking about lately, I think
The humble Aldi
there's
pizza.
it's like a different category that still works.
Yes, absolutely. And now, Ben and I, the recent time that we had this Aldi pizza was New Year's Eve. Because I was thinking ahead. I was like, you know what? We're going to be hanging out, not a huge group, but a group. And so we're going to get a little drunk or something, and then we're going to want to eat, obviously. Now, I don't want to open the can of worms. Ben and I have had an experience of ordering pizza on New Year's Eve that is very It's in dispute, and it will always be in dispute. But long story short, I ordered a pizza on New Year's Eve. It never came. Ben says it was my fault, and to this day, I'll say it was not my fault.
Can I just tell you why? I just want to tell you why. I mean, just for Dagan and Colin's sake, the audience, you can take a break for a minute.
I was drunk.
Dustin was hammered.
Okay.
And wearing a onesie.
I was not hammered. I was in control of my facilities.
Dustin was wearing a onesie
night.
On New Year's Eve when I got there. And he had been drinking. And he said, I ordered this pizza and they're not bringing it. And I opened the app on his phone and the wrong address was in the delivery line.
That's the thing.
Now, whose fault is that? The person who put in the address? I don't know. I'm just saying. He says they changed it on him. I say that it doesn't change it from street to avenue. But
that's like something my mother would say.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Okay,
we've opened this can of worms at this point. So fuck you, Ben. Here's the thing. I am a regular customer of our local Papa John's. I use the Papa John's app. I do this because I get Papa John's points.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck, even if I was drunk, would I put someone else's address in? And here's the thing. When I called them, they said, yeah, this is a glitch in our system.
Oh, okay.
We're going to give you a free pizza.
Oh, so you got something
gave me a free pizza.
Okay.
Well, they sided with you then. I think it's beyond dispute then, perhaps.
Yeah, I know what
So back to the humble Aldi pizza. I wanted to avoid any kind of delivery issues. Because let me tell you, that night that we didn't have the pizza that we wanted, it really sucked. I was like, damn, I'm kind of drunk right now. A lot of people here are. Wish we had pizza. Yeah. It was 1 a.m. It sucked. Go to bed hungry. It's horrible. So the Aldi pizza, that's where it comes in clutch. You just put it in the oven for a little bit. You're good to go.
Yeah,
no
anytime, immediate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just found out Aldi's part of Trader Joe's. Like they're the same company, right?
I thought they were German or something.
Who's the Toyota and who's the Lexus in that? I don't even know. I don't shop at Aldi. I don't know anything about it.
It's supposed to be. It's a Trader Joe's. I would say I thought it was like a Trader Joe's competitor almost.
I think they're the same company.
Oh, okay.
I think they're
the same parent company, whatever.
Oh, same family. Okay.
It's funny because maybe we're getting on a different topic now, but 10, 15 years ago, Aldi here was like, when my mom needed groceries, we went half an hour to go to Aldi because it was so much cheaper. The food wasn't good. It wasn't better. It wasn't healthy, whatever, but it was what we could afford.
Okay.
Now Aldi here is like, a little bit hipster. It's like, not trendy or anything. It's still just a big warehouse with, you got to return your own carts and take a quarter out of it.
It's
put a quarter in.
Yeah, it's not a convention.
But I was talking to Lockmort the other day, and he goes, "It's so funny that Aldi's like that for you guys because here it's basically just where the trash shop." I don't remember if he said trash, but I think
he probably did.
Yeah.
Oh,
he said here's where the like Aldi is. You only go there if you're like dirty. And I was like, that's maybe kind of closer to what it used to be here years, like a decade or more ago. But now it's like kind of a little bit trendy.
I hear some of their stuff's pretty good. I've never been in one, but
it's awesome.
You know what I like? I don't know if I had one in San Francisco, but not anywhere else. Was Sprouts. I really like that place. I don't know if you guys have it. It's a kind of a boutique style supermarket, but they have they were awesome because they have Boar's Head, which is obviously huge. Oh, but here in Virginia, Publix has Boar's Head, so that's
Publix is the one. Publix is nice. I like.
Yeah, and Publix is like the nice supermarket. So
Kyle, did you get this growing up? We're talking about crappy pizza. We're talking about store bought frozen food case pizza and Papa John's and all Sparrow and all that kind of stuff. I had this thing as a kid. And it could be we're only half Italian, but really we were brought up Italian because that's the side of the family we were closest to. And there was a lot of snobbery with the Italian stuff, especially when it came to food. But I felt like some of the stuff that we were taught or some of the information that was handed down was just like either incorrect or half true or wires were just crossed. Like there was a big rule in my family that I understood from a way too young age. Like, you don't put certain seasoning in the tomato sauce for meatballs. You only put it in that, like certain things are reserved just for the pizza sauce type of thing. Right. That type of thing. And then, so there was always like seemingly arbitrary rules. It wasn't basil; it was oregano. You don't put oregano in tomato sauce for the meatballs. You only oregano's for pizza. Right. And it always seemed like, is that right? Like, do all Italian families go in for these seemingly arbitrary rules? But I remember, like, I was like you guys, like school pizza Friday. Like I was in like the little shitty Elio's pizza. I loved it. We always had Elio's pizza in my freezer. My very Italian grandparents always had Elio pizza in the freezer. But I always got the sense that the crappy pizza, the quote unquote crappy pizza, was acceptable for lunch, but it was absolutely out of the question for dinner. Like you just did not do that for dinner. Like my grandparents, you went to Vincent's or Roma for pizza. Growing up out east on Long Island, we went to Tony's or Ragtime. Like that was it. Like there was a snobbery even with the takeout. And I always felt a little guilty. Like even to this day, like I always liked Pizza Hut and Domino's. Like I think it's a different thing. I think it's a very processed fast food junky taste, but the greasy sugar, salt, high sodium, like there's just something very satisfying about that, especially when you're drinking. But I always felt a tinge of guilt liking it because I was raised to think we were above that, but also just the sheer hypocrite nature of like that was always in our freezer though. Right. So was it so that was what I always told myself, like it's acceptable for lunch because I never remember having Elio's pizza or Tombstone or DiGiorno's for, like Totino's, or I didn't remember having that for dinner ever, but I feel like it was like a quick lunch thing. And I never really checked in with our parents about that. Like what was the stance with mom and the Ruggieros with like processed pizza? Because one thing I will say, that was never a thing for family gatherings. Like takeout was rarely a thing, but if we were going to get takeout at grandma's or Aunt Carla's, it was always pizzeria pizza. It was never Domino's. It was never delivery.
Yeah, I never had delivery really in any regularity until I was in college. And Domino's used to have the it was the 555. I think it was like, or was it? It was like, no, what was it? 355 or something. You get 3 pizzas. I don't know, 5 toppings, something like that for $15. Some weird number thing that they used to promote, and we would just save them. Like we would order a bunch of them and then just keep them. I think it was 3 for $15. Like something ended up being, but it was not that.
Those were the days.
Yeah. So
unbelievable.
So yeah, I think there's a place for all pizzas as well. There is a strata of pizza, of course, and my biggest question with a lot of things, and this is true with this too, is when I have bad pizza, I'm like, don't you know you can do it the other way? Like it doesn't seem like it's that complicated. There's like schlubs on Long Island making this pizza like in their sleep. I'm paying how much money for this, and you don't have to do this way. Because I'm always confused by bad pizza, but that's very rare. I've had what I would consider bad pizza, but I'll still eat it. All right, my friends. Oh, do we have more to say? Or
I was just going to say this, that Colin and Dagan both said that they weren't sure how contentious the subject would be. And Colin, I think, is about to talk about something that can be pretty contentious. And pizza is still probably going to be the top commented thing about on this episode.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
I wanted a comment where people would yell at their computer.
Yeah.
That's kind of the emphasis.
Yeah.
How about this then? We'll just say, you can comment about this. Hey, pineapple pizza lovers, fuck off.
Okay. Listen,
leave your comments.
We said hot takes.
I want to read them. I will
beef.
scoff at your comments.
Here's what I want.
Said, talk that shit. I want that beef.
Kyle, this is what we have to do. I know we're getting ready to go to Houston. I'm excited, but I really do want to do a live event on Long Island. I really do. Like I can't wait till we do that. And I want to really get Dustin and Ben and the rest of the crew, the rest of the squad on the island, because I really want to share Long Island pizza. I want to spread the gospel. And it's going to have to be Tony's because Ragtime is gone. Or maybe Vincent's, if Vincent's is still open. But I want to see, because it sounds like New Yorkers go on and on about this. I maintain that the best pizza is still on Long Island, not in Manhattan, not in Brooklyn. That's good pizza too. But
New Haven is a strong place that people like to talk about as well.
I keep hearing about this. And I didn't live in that part of, you said New Haven.
Yeah, we're around here.
I didn't live in that part of Connecticut, but I understand the pizza is like, I also heard something, I heard it's good, and then I heard another thing where they put clams on the pizza, and then I was done.
No, that's gross.
I was like, wait, that's not.
How about cold cheese pizza, which I think was invented at Huntington on Long Island.
Oh.
Where they take the pizza out of the oven and then they put a handful of like fresh mozzarella shredded on it.
That
and then
I
serve
like.
it to you. Yeah, that's good.
That
shit.
sounds delicious.
Yeah, that's good.
But anyway, we'll see when we get there. Finally, at some point, we do our live event, because it's not just. It's true. There's just something about Long Island pizza that just, I don't know. It's magical.
It is. It is. And TJ's too. We'll have to bring them to TJ's and get a real hero.
Oh yeah, good point.
And How Mei for Chinese.
Oh, is this still open?
I don't know. I would assume
best
so.
Chinese food.
Oh my God. The
best.
Szechuan. All right. Let's end with my topic. I wanted to end with this topic so that people can clue out if they want and turn this off, because it's going to be a more political topic, I think. I think it will obviously be a more political topic, but I don't even know if I want to necessarily approach it from a political perspective, though I think that will end up coming in at some point. I wanted to ask you guys about just war. And obviously what's happening in Ukraine right now brings this to the fore for us. It's been going on for about a year. The Russians invaded Ukraine in February of last year, and this is a really unfortunate situation, a terrible situation, where I think that there is an aggressor and I think that there is a victim. I think all that is true. But I feel like I'm living in La La Land. I feel like this must have been what it felt like in some level. It's a different degree, I think, but I was very pro-Iraq war from the very beginning. And obviously everyone was pro-Afghanistan war, but Iraq, I was very pro. Like, let's go fuck these guys up. I had no idea why I felt like that, of course. And I was wrong. But I imagine if you felt from the very beginning that this was a bad idea, which many people did, that you saw shit that confused you. Why do you feel this way? This doesn't even make any sense. Why are you doing this? And I wish that someone on the outside jarred me awake, but no one did. I was reinforced by the news. I was reinforced by talk radio. I was reinforced by Drudge Report. I was reinforced by Fox News and other things. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I like Fox News. I don't hide that at all. I think I like some of those shows. So but I'm reinforced by period Fox News, by period Drudge, by neoconservatism, the policy of the new American century, and all of these like kind of globalist war hawkish shit. And it was dead wrong. And it wasn't dead wrong because we lost, which we did. It was wrong because it was fucking wrong. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of time. It was a waste, most keyly, of American lives and Iraqi lives and other people's lives. It made no sense. And I want to act in some way as the person that I wish was there for me back then. I want to act like that for someone now. I see around us this growing furor for unexplainable war. And I don't understand where people's heads are at. And I feel like it's easy to move around geopolitical pieces on a map when your people are not engaged. But I feel like things that are happening are getting us closer to becoming engaged in this in a real way, being pulled into it in some sort of material way. That's the percentage odds of that happening is not zero, and it should be zero, not 0.1, not 1 or 5, 0% chance that we would ever get involved in this conflict. And since the number is not there, but I think more like a couple of coin flips perhaps away from us being involved in a more material way, I wanted to just ask you guys how you felt about this. And if you feel like there's this weird growing familiar bubbling of some weird hawkishness that just crops up seemingly when you look back almost every generation in American history. And I think I'm just surprised by how historically illiterate it is and how historically illiterate I was supporting Iraq, being a history student at a university at the time, and was still so fucking wrong. But when you take the veil off and look back at American conflict, some of them went well and some of them didn't, but I think we can all agree that most of them were totally dumb. Vietnam, ridiculous, absolutely insane, have no idea what that was all about. The draft, 70,000 or 50,000, 60,000 dead Americans. I mean, an unfathomable amount of people, just a generation of people fucked. Korean War and the domino theory and all this kind of stuff, stupid, ends in a stalemate. We are still dealing with that today, by the way. The exact fucking parallel between South and North Korea, 1953. World War II was fine. That was an existential crisis, in my opinion. World War I, we had no business being in, and we got involved in that as well. The Spanish-American War in 1898 was basically a false flag operation, if you believe what happened with the USS Maine and all that kind of stuff. The Mexican-American War in the 1840s. All of these different things. It's like, what are we doing? When are we going to learn? And I'm haunted by Dwight Eisenhower's 1961 farewell address when he talks and basically coins the term the military-industrial complex. And this man who saw World War II firsthand and engineered the Allied victory of World War II, and was overseeing the government of the only, and this is an important piece, the only intact victor in World War II. All the other allies were fucked. Whether you're talking about the Chinese, obviously the Russians, the British, the French, etc. And we had all the power, all the industrial might, and we had the initiative. And he said, you better watch what happens now. And you better keep this shit on, because this is self-perpetuating economic warfare. And I feel like people just don't see it for what it is. When we say we're sending $10 billion to Ukraine, that's not what happens. We buy $10 billion in weapons from American weapons manufacturers. Then those weapons are sent over there, and some of that money is funneled back into the campaigns of the people who are engineering this from Washington. It is a tale as old as time for a conflict that is sad and unfortunate, but has nothing to do with us. And I am unapologetically against our involvement in it. I'm unapologetically against us even sending weapons. I think is a really bad idea. It doesn't mean that the Russians are right. And I think that that's like the binary thinking. People just can't go a step down. Putin's obviously a maniac. And there's deep historical beef in the post-Soviet Union era with what happened to them, especially in the 70s and 80s when leadership seemed to have kind of just capitulated. The Soviet Union just collapsed, as everyone, I think I would hope no. There wasn't a war. There were some revolutions afterwards. And so when I see people saying things like, it's a cheap way for us to beat the Russians, I'm like, why are we trying to beat the Russians? What are you talking about? Why are we having any sort of military involvement with them? We already beat them without firing a shot, by the way. And what they're doing is wrong. And that's scary. And I feel bad for the Ukrainians. But there's a lot of fucked up shit going on around the world. And there's a lot of fucked up things happening in the United States right now. And people say, well, we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. I'm like, is that right? I don't see that happening. So when I see 10 or 20 or $50 billion being sent overseas, but I see Flint has a water problem and Jackson, Mississippi has a water problem, and we have all these things and a porous border and poor people on the streets. Look at Los Angeles and San Francisco. Look at New York City. I want to just be, I don't care how much heat I get for this. I don't. I want to be the voice of reason for someone out there, for them to someone wake up. We shouldn't be perpetually fighting wars. We shouldn't be scaring people into thinking things are going to happen. Like the Russians, who, by the way, are a shadow of the Red Army, can barely even take pieces of Ukraine that were already pro-Russian. There is, you know what the threat of them invading a NATO country is? Less than it was a year ago, because we all see how weak they are now. You know? So I am not worried about them going to the Baltics. I am not worried about them going to Poland. I don't want us involved in getting and dramatically escalating this war, because I've talked to Dagan about this, and this is where I wanted to kind of end and kick it over to you guys, is mutually assured destruction is a doctrine, just like the Monroe Doctrine, just like other things that the United States lives and breathes by. If the Russians use a nuclear weapon on the battlefield, we have to fire one back, or mutually assured destruction is no longer a doctrine. That's fucking scary. We should be as far away from that situation as possible. And we shouldn't be rah-rahing for war, because before you know it, it's not going to be just your money that's sucked into there. It's not going to be just Abrams tanks and F-16s and all of this other stuff. It's going to be more serious than that. I feel bad for what's happening over there. I think it's terrible. But we don't need to be escalating this. And I want people in our orbit to just realize that it's okay to be against war. Just look at the pages of history. If the war isn't the war, let me back up. Look at history and say, when has this been good and when has this been bad? And how often has it been bad? And how often has it been good? And how often has it turned out? And I'm not one of these people that say, and this is just the God's honest truth, and it sucks, because a lot of people in my generation fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, including people I know. But those people died for no reason. And that's going to be the same exact thing that happens again if this escalates and draws more and more people in. And I have other things to say. I think, the American military is not supposed to be the boot of the world. And that we've, and again, it comes from this notion and this idea that we were the only intact winning nation. We just became powerful in a vacuum. But we should be very careful about using that power and how it hurts others and the geopolitical balances at play, and make sure that we don't make Ukraine or the Eastern Europe the next Iraq, the next Afghanistan, the next Vietnam, the next Laos, the next Cambodia, the next Korea. When are we going to learn? So that's what I wanted to say. I'll kick it over to you guys. Ben, what do you have to say about this?
I think our fascination as a culture with war is interesting because, I think Washington, on his way out of office, by the way, one of the most famous, rose to power by being one of the most famous war heroes of all time, right? Goes out of office and says, hey, don't get mixed up with anybody, any foreign powers, stay to yourselves, no more war, whatever.
No entangling alliances, I think was the term, right?
Yeah.
Or was that Jefferson?
I don't know. But he also said, don't split into parties. We didn't do that either, but we didn't listen to him there either. But it's 3 or 4 years till we find ourselves in another battle of bloodshed. And ever since then, like you said, at least once a generation, if not multiple times, we found ourselves in war, whether it's sending people, sending weapons, totally invading, having what's the word I'm looking for? Having encampments, people stationed there, and it's really interesting how our fascination with war as a culture goes from we want to be involved, we want to take everybody out, to let's stay as far away as possible. And you never have everybody aligned. And the sides that are aligned are never the same. 20 years ago, I feel like, for lack of a better way to phrase this, the Democrats would have been like, no, we can't be in war. And the Republicans were screaming, send our children to die, please. And now it's the opposite. The left is saying, let's go over there. Let's send people over there. They need our help. And the right's saying, no, we should stay away. And I'm not saying that either party is ever right or wrong, because there's nuance in everything, I think. That's why I'm pretty center of the road. But it's just fascinating that we can't help ourselves for some reason. We feel like America needs to be the savior. And don't get me wrong, especially in this conflict, I don't think we should be staying out of Ukraine. If they have refugees, if there are people who need humanitarian help in some way, I think that we should provide that. We have the ability to do so. We should also be providing it for our own people, but I think we should be staying away. But we can't help ourselves but to talk about it, and to then, like you said, with some corruption and personal influence and gain, send things to benefit elsewhere. And I remember in the I was young, but in the Clinton years, it felt like we were going, we were sending stuff to Syria every other week, so that our and I'm not saying this about Clinton necessarily, I'm just saying in those years, so that our people could say, look at all the good we did abroad, and we helped in this national tragedy that was happening, and this and that genocide that was going on. And don't get me wrong, like helping to stop violence against innocent people by the means that are necessary is a righteous and just thing. But when we do it at the peril of our own people, that the government's only job is to protect us, not to fight wars for other people. And that bothers me some. And it bothers me as someone like you, Colin, who in the past has been very pro-war. And I don't know that I was as rah-rah as you then, and I don't know that I'm quite as isolationist as you now, but I'm definitely closer, to both of those than the average person in the media right now is. So I also find it fascinating how like against war I am, and being involved in things that don't, if they come to us, yeah, let's take them out. If they pose a threat, an actual real threat, then I think we should have a military that can go out and kick their ass. But it's so interesting to me how like I'm very anti-war, but some of my favorite things to study are old wars. And yeah, there's a difference in being fascinated with historical fact and being fantasizing over future death. There's a difference there. I think some people have an actual like fantasy of going and killing people, and that's obviously terrible and dangerous. But I don't know. It's hard for me to reckon with because I'm very, don't get involved. Don't make us part of this. Don't send our kids to die. But at the same time, there's that, a slight bleeding heart in me too that says, well, these people need our help. So in this particular instance, and, somebody may be listening to this in 15 years and not even have even been born yet. I don't know. I doubt it, but it's possible. In this particular instance, I don't think we should be doing what we're doing. I think that Putin is dangerous because he's insane. I think that Russia could be dangerous because they have nukes. But I don't think that if we weren't helping to escalate things, that would be a concern of ours necessarily. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the only thing keeping them from launching insane things is the fact that we're here. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. So I guess the point I'm making is I'm also pretty anti-war. I'm definitely anti sending in anything that gets us entwined, and even more so against doing that while our people are hurting. I mean, there are people that live within blocks of me that don't have food. There's certainly people all over the country that don't have what they need. And I'm also not a proponent of the government giving things out to everybody just for whatever reason. But I do think that we should help people where they need help, but they should be our people. And I know that's very nationalistic and very almost tribalistic in a sense. But if people want to help the war effort, I don't think it should be the government doing it with the people's tax dollars. I think there's other ways to be involved. And yeah, I go in circles in my own brain, so I'm sure I'm going in circles here, but I'm pretty much anti-war on all fronts. And I'm also at the same time very pro-military for the sake of defending our people and our property.
Yeah, I believe in a strong, powerful, independent American military, the strongest in the history of the world, ideally. See, like me watching from an historical perspective, watching what's happened in Ukraine says to me, we have less to worry about with Russia than we ever imagined. I mean, I know this is them acting out. I know that there's a war going on in Ukraine right now, but I also feel like it's going way worse than they thought it was going to go. And that was before we even got involved. So we're seeing them at full force. This is them putting to bear their full conventional fighting machine, which is a shadow of the United States or the United States. And so I just think that there are victims of brutality, war, famine all over the world. I don't know why we feel like we need to get involved in all of them. And whether with weapons, like what's going on in Yemen, we're obviously occupying parts of Syria. I think things happen in the background and people don't ask themselves like what the cost of this is and the cost to human life, the cost to order. And the cost of like, why don't we try to create new norms of peace? And I'm all about, by the way, Russia being economically isolated and sanctioned. Like that's good stuff. Like, dude, that's what the tools you bring to bear. Say like, we're just not going to do business with you then. And now that's not working out very well for us. I mean, they're doing fine. But that is the tool you bring to bear. And and I'd kick it over to you, Dig. I mean, the reality is this, like, I think I've talked about this in the past, but I'm not even really sure I believe in NATO as like as an alliance anymore. I don't understand why it really even exists. I think we should have alliances, but we should make them on our own terms. Like we should have a very close alliance, like a military alliance with, say, Canada and Mexico, more than we should have a close military alliance with Poland. Now, there's nothing wrong with Poland. I like Poland. And maybe they would be in the alliance too, but it doesn't have to be this geographic thing because it's based on this old predicate, which is not going to, there are no war machines in Europe. There are none. I mean, there's no Wehrmacht, there's no Red Army, there's no Luftwaffe, there's none of that. I mean, this is really gritty conventional warfare like you would have seen in ex-Soviet states in the 90s. Doesn't mean it's good and doesn't mean it's ideal. And we want one side to win, certainly. But I look at things around the world and I'm like, if we would use our military, it's like, I could see the United States fighting a narco war in Mexico much more preferable to most people in the United States than, say, fighting, overseas to something that doesn't really matter with us. Like, we're friends with the Mexicans. They're our neighbors. We should try to make things more normal in our hemisphere, more normal in our neighborhood, more normal in our backyard. And so I think that there's something about that too. But I'm wondering what you think, Dave, about this. Am I crazy in thinking that there's this growing quiet furor for increased conflict and this hatred, especially of Russians, which is fine? But I look at Russians as defeated, in my opinion. Like, from our perspective, it's like, we won, dude. They can act out and we can try to do left, right, and center, but I just don't think it's worth us escalating this thing into something we can't control.
Yeah, and it's, I think about this stuff a lot, and I see the fear reflected in my kids' eyes, which is interesting because I thought when the Soviet Union, we grew up in the 80s, we grew up in the Rocky IV era, right? Ivan Drago, Red Dawn, Be Afraid of the Russians, that whole thing. And I honestly thought that my kids wouldn't worry about this stuff. Certainly with the advent of 9/11, which is a completely detached thing from this particular thing. But I thought they might grow up in a world where they had to be afraid of certain things. But I certainly didn't think they would be worried about nuclear war with Russia. That whole thing came full circle very oddly for me. And they're not sitting in front of a news feed 24 hours a day. The only time they really ever hear news is when I have BBC World News or NPR on in the car for a short ride. If we're going to the shore or something, we're listening to music. So that's the only time they're really ever getting news, besides from what they're learning in school, right? Whatever current events lessons they're getting. This is a complex thing for me. And I have to zoom out a little bit. Of course, this is on our mind right now. Russia, Ukraine going on over the last year. Not only that, increasing tensions with China, largely over Taiwan. We got Turkey and Greece beefing again. We always got that nut in North Korea looming. Israel, Palestine. There's a lot of shit. The world's embroiled in a lot of stuff. And it is interesting to watch not only the United States, but other significant and influential world powers like Germany starting to seemingly dip their toe in the water of fighting this proxy war with Russia. It's happening, I guess. And it's a difficult thing for me because, look, I couldn't be more anti-war than I am. So let me zoom out for a second and just say that I do worry about this. And I do worry about this, especially when my country, specifically our people, our soldiers, our military, the lives are involved. Okay. But in an overarching sense, war doesn't make any sense to me at all. Okay. Let me break it down for you the way I look at it, because again, I have to boil it down to brass tacks and really simplify it. That's just my nature. I'm not really smart or intelligent when it comes to world news and politics and history and all of that kind of thing. So I go the complete emotional route and I say, look, we're all inhabiting this spinning ball in space together. Okay. Disparate peoples, right? We're in different geographic locations, different customs, different cultures, different religions. We believe different things. We have different values, different origins, different histories. But our common bond is our humanity, right? We're all human. We're different. And all of those differences should be celebrated. But because of those differences and everything I just mentioned, listen, disagreement, contention, conflict, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it's unthinkable to me then and now to not be able to arrive at some sort of agreement, an accord, a compromise, an understanding, no matter how long it takes in a diplomatic sense. I know it's more complicated than that. I know there's histories. I know there's ancient grudges. I know money plays a big part. I know fear plays a big part. But there's no reason that it has to evolve to two countries pointing their weapons at each other and murdering each other by the tune of 1,000, sometimes millions, in order for the victor to emerge and be able to get what they want through death and destruction. It's the most foreign concept to me. I don't understand it. I feel like a 4-year-old understands that. Like the fact that it should ever come down to physical violence and war is just unthinkable to me. I can't imagine that. You know, it's just a foreign concept to me. But I have to be honest with you. I've always embraced, I'm not an isolationist. Colin knows this about me. I'm just not. I've never felt that way. I feel like, in very simple terms, it's a very 80s Democrat mentality, and I know that. But I feel like in a perfect world, the United States is the light. I'm not saying it is the light. I'm saying in its perfect sense, the United States is the light. And we should be here to help the less fortunate, the downtrodden, all that kind of stuff. I believe that's what makes us proud as Americans. I'm the same way. Like, you can't, with social services here in the country, you can't disband welfare just because people take advantage of it. Because some people take advantage of it does not mean you can stop helping people. I've always been of that mindset. So there is a part of me that says if we could settle things in Ukraine faster, and it may save lives in the end, there's a part of me that says it's our job to help. I just feel that way. I've always felt that way. I do have those, quote unquote, liberal sensibilities. That's just how I am. I feel like it's too much not to help. We have so much. Yes. And you know what? It's complicated because what Ben said really struck a nerve too with me. It was like, yes, we need things here. Americans need things. So Americans are starving. I mean, inflation is, pinning people to the floor. Like, there's a lot of things going on in this country too. I get that. Like, it's an all-encompassing thing. And that's why I have a little inner turmoil, inner conflict on how I feel. But there is that big part of me that feels like, if we're not helping, what are we so proud of? What makes us any different than anybody else not helping? And I know that is overly simplistic, but I do feel that way a lot. I do honestly, that is my feelings. And look, Putin's out of his mind. His regime is bad for the world. I mean, we're talking dystopian sci-fi levels of evil warlord. Like, there's no redeeming value there. The guy's he's just bad for planet Earth, obviously, right? And I just, it's hard. And the hardest thing for me saying that is saying, like, I don't really support an isolationist, quote unquote, policy. And maybe isolationist is a bit too extreme, but you know what I mean, is that I'm not, thoughtlessly throwing American lives at the problem. I would never do that. Our soldiers our military, these people that serve are precious to me. I'm not, lightly saying, yeah, just throw American assets at the problem and it's going to go away. Like I'm Gen X. I was raised on Vietnam films and the horror of war. Like that speaks to me, I'm not, look, I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I'm not like, I'm all for peace, but yeah, it's a complicated issue for me, but I do. And you know what, by getting involved and by, for instance, supplying Ukraine at this point with tanks and Germany doing the same and all of that, yeah, it opens up a bag of worms. These people are already very anti-West, and yeah, it's dangerous to think of the shit that could pop off with America's direct involvement. But I feel like we're already involved. It's kind of a game at this point. Like, how far is far enough for everybody to know we're properly fighting this proxy war, as opposed to right now we're not fighting this proxy war? I don't know too much about military strategy and tactics and the ins and outs of this conflict, but I'm assuming without Western involvement, Ukraine may have not gotten this far. Like, you know what I mean? So that's already at play. So it's difficult for me. And, I know how Colin feels, and I really understand that. And, I think as Americans, we have to be able to agree to disagree. And I try to be introspective and also look at the benefits of everybody's argument. But there's something about it that not helping doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? To me personally. But I think that's also a very complex notion. And there's a lot that comes to that. There's a lot that comes along with that, and a lot of baggage that comes along with that I think is interesting. And I think it's also very important in this type of thing to realize it's not the Russian people. It's the Russian regime. It's not the Russian populace. They're kind of just like us. They were born into their situation, for better or for worse. They were born into their families, into their geographic location, into their country. It's all, life is it's a slot machine. You know what I mean? It's a giant roulette wheel, like what we get, what we inherit. So that, that's kind of where my head's at with all this kind of stuff. But it's just, I wish we could zoom out and just, that this war would have never had to, like, was it really impossible before Russia decided to invade Ukraine physically to come to some sort of terms help these people come to some sort of terms and work this out? Was that why is that impossible? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I'm just not educated enough. But for me, it just flies in the face of reason. Why does it need to get to this point? Isn't there something that could have served both sides, some sort of compromise?
Yeah.
My dad always used to say to me, you're trying to make sense out of nonsense. And I think it's not, it's nonsense.
Well, I just think straight up, a lot of players want there to be war. I think a lot of players wanted there to be war. I think it's lucrative. I think it engages people. Like I think we have to kind of, in my opinion, I'll throw it to you, Dustin. It's like, we got to categorize. I think going to war on behalf of other people is something the United States could do. And I think in certain situations should do. But I got to be honest with you, not all relationships and not all countries in our perspective are created equal in this regard, right? For instance, if Canada or Mexico were invaded by a foreign nation, we would definitely help them. And that would be to our benefit, because now we would have a foreign hostile actor on our border, right? So like, there's a pragmatic reason we would do that. Plus, we're friends with them. We share the continent with them. We have a peaceful order with them, with these borders, basically since the 1840s. So things are good, and we would want to maintain that kind of Pax Americana style stuff. And then I think that there are certain allies. I mean, we basically did get involved in the European theater on behalf of England or UK. And I think that there are certain countries where it's like, yes, these are kind of our people. And I think that's okay to say that. That's why I think that Europe, it's like when you see Ukraine, it's like mainland Europe. It's like, you guys got to do something about this if you have a problem with it. This is your backyard. Just like the narco terrorism in Mexico is our problem because it's in our backyard. Just like what's going on in China really should be Japan's and South Korea's problem because it's in their backyard, you know? And so I see these different things like all this saber rattling about Taiwan. And I'm like, guys, listen, if China wants Taiwan, they're going to take it. And there's nothing we're going to do to stop them. And we should definitely not get involved. Absolutely not. Ideally, that won't happen. And ideally, the price that they pay will be high. And I know that the Taiwanese are going to sabotage all their factories and there's all sorts of crazy defense systems there. And they go into the so-called porcupine thing and they make it as destructive as possible and they fuck it up. But if that happens, that happens. And it's not a war worth sending our people to fight and die over. And I feel that way about Ukraine too. I'm sorry. It's just that way. Like we don't have deep social ties. This isn't a place, dude, I'm 38 years old. This isn't a country that ever even comes up, you know, in the United States until a year ago. So it's not like we have this deep cultural tie to them where it's like this has to be other global actors coming in, getting involved. We've already done a lot. We've given Ukraine more money than the Russians have spent in that war. You know, straight up. And so we've done our part. And I think that there has to be people that accept that this is going to end where Russians get some of this territory, unfortunately. And that's the way it's going to end, just like it ended when we partitioned Korea, just like it ended when we partitioned Vietnam. We were happy to do that when we were able to get out. I guess it's different for others, though. They have to fight to the death. Dustin, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you, Colin, in that we have to be careful about how we pick our battles. And I'm a little reluctant to speak on Ukraine, this conflict in particular, just because I feel like as I always am getting more information about what's happening, it's like I'm always changing how I feel about it. And I think that just changes based on the day too, based on like what perspective you're coming from. But I do want to say this about war in general, and I guess you can apply this to the Ukraine situation as well. Growing up in the era of the Iraq War and being from a very conservative family, I think, and sounds like Ben and Colin and I have kind of the same perspective. It was like, yeah, this is the righteous thing to do. This is a good war to fight in. And I think there were a lot of, at least at the time, arguments that felt sound from that. Obviously, things didn't always turn out that way, right? But things in my mindset about war really changed when I read a book when I was a teenager called Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut.
Awesome book.
Which the full title is Slaughterhouse-Five or The Children's Crusade. And when you guys were talking, I was like, I know there's this quote in this book that I really want to read to you guys and for the audience because it really kind of summed up how I feel about things. And I found it. The quote is, "We've had to imagine the war here, and we have imagined that it was being fought by aging men like ourselves. We have forgotten that wars were fought by babies. When I saw those freshly shaved faces, it was a shock. My God, I said to myself, it's the Children's Crusade." This like really made an impact on me. And it's funny because I feel like in general, I don't remember a lot about the book as a whole. It's kind of a tough book to read. It takes place nonlinear, has to do with like alien abduction and nonlinear time, but it really is like this anti-war book. And I'm not saying that Kurt Vonnegut, like I agree with everything he says, but it's so easy to forget the human life involved. And I think all three of you have touched on this in some ways, that every soldier that goes to a war, whether it's to fight or in the worst case die, that's somebody's son, that's someone's friend, someone's dad. And with that, if we're going to go to war with anybody or dance around with the possibility of going to war, it needs to be taken with the utmost gravity. Because it's human life involved. And I think that is sadly the part that is most often forgotten. It's easy when you think about, oh, we'll send this many soldiers. we'll do this, we'll do that. But to sit and contemplate the individual lives, right? And I think this is a problem in general with our culture just moving away from this idea of the sanctity of life and what that means and how important that is. And I know that the argument can be flipped. It's like, well, what about the lives where you're going to fight? What about Ukrainians? And I don't mean to downplay that at all. But I think it's like you were saying, Colin, in that we can't save everybody. We can't be sacrificing our own all the time to help others. And it sucks. In an ideal world, we could save everybody, but we can't.
It's just that we've shown that the thing is that we've shown that we've tried.
Yeah.
You know, we've tried this before. We've gotten, it all begins like this. Who were the original protagonists of the Vietnam War? The Vietnamese and the French. Right? It had nothing to do with us. We got sucked into it over the years, you know? And what did the 50 or 60,000 Americans die for in Vietnam? Oh, nothing. No reason.
Yeah.
And so you're exactly right. It's about the human life. That's what I'm trying to say. It's how many times are you going to bash your face against the fucking wall before you realize exactly the way it's going to go? And I fear I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to say that.
No, I think that's about all I wanted to say. Just, I highly recommend. I mean, obviously that book is a really, really good book about, the horrors of war, the idea there is no good war. Not that there can't be wars that are worth fighting, but it's nothing to celebrate. The other, I guess, the film that really impacted the way I thought about war was The Thin Red Line, which is a Terrence Malick film that is super, super good.
Yeah,
but
it's a good movie.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. I could understand this alternate history where America has been this fighting force for freedom throughout its history and has won all of these major conflicts on behalf of downtrodden people. But it never happens. Literally, World War II is the only notable example. And I feel like World War II is such a unique and unfortunate. First of all, it's the same war as World War I. We were just not really involved in a heavy way in the first one. It's just the same conflict moving in slow motion that pulled us in. And we obviously had our war declared on us by the Nazis and the Japanese, and we fought in the Pacific region. And we could have very easily ignored Europe if we wanted to. And we obviously didn't do that. And I think we got involved on behalf of a cause for liberty against a fascistic dictatorship that had designs of world conquest. And so I'll tell you what, if something like that happens again, we'll get involved. You know, we'll be there. When a country like Nazi Germany that by that point had taken over all of Europe, except for obviously the UK, when that happens, then we'll come get involved. But we have to like not go to the extremes and all of that, because it's like, what kind of country is North Korea today? Oh, it's communist. How about Vietnam? Communist. And by the way, united communist country. We fought so hard for them and they didn't even want us there. Right? Like I don't get it. I don't get why people want to just throw money and material, and ultimately people are making the same mistake thinking that this won't get us involved. We've already had people in Ukraine. There's no doubt about it in my mind. First of all, we have freelancers there. And we have entire not battalions, but units of American soldiers there that are fighting on their own behalf. And we have plenty of American soldiers in NATO territory training and doing all sorts of clandestine shit or whatever, and whatever, that's fine. But let's not pretend that it's not going to, if this continues, that it's not going to embroil us as that black hole becomes more and more potent and pulls us in like all these other conflicts do. They didn't include us. The last place I think we thought we were going to have any problems, to be honest, was in Southeast Asia after World War II. I think we thought we were going to have to fight the Soviets, you know, in Europe. I think that's what everyone was focused on. And things don't work out the way you think. Things don't work out. And it doesn't mean that what's happening is right or wrong. I think the Russians are bad. I think you're right, Dagan. I think Putin's a bad actor, clearly. And the ideal would be for him to be assassinated. I think that would be, or overthrown in some way. I think that would be the absolute ideal situation.
Yeah, cut the head off the snake.
I'm not no fan of his.
Save a lot of lives.
Right, but they have to do the work over there to liberate Ukraine, right? And to do what they need to do. And I don't think we have to disabuse the world that we're just going to get involved in all these things. People like to call us warmongers on one half and then get mad when we're not as involved on the other. And I think we should just set a new precedent to say, like, we're not getting involved unless there's real crisis in certain places where we feel like we can have the greatest effect. Doesn't mean we can't bring massive economic leverage, shut your bank accounts off, seize your property, do all sorts of, that's fine. But here's the honest to God's truth is I don't blame Russia for being like, was that soldier just killed with an American rifle? Like did they just drop an American bomb on us? Is that an Abrams tank coming across? Like, that to me is provocative. And I think it's different. And I just hope we know what we're getting ourselves into. And I hope I can be some sort of light, even though I'm going to get a lot of abuse for this, I'm sure. Hopefully I can be the light to say, like, I am trying to tell you that in the years to come, you will wish you were just, that you didn't want to escalate this, that instead you have to tamp things down. And that's just the unfortunate reality. It sucks. But no war. All right. That's it for this episode of Constellation, a lengthy one. I think this might be our longest one yet.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Glad we ended up on a high point too. That was
well, I wanted to end on this one so that people could just shut it off.
Just shut it off
if they want. You are opting in for the political segments. There's no excuse.
Listening. Yeah.
But Ben, do you have any closing comments?
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Talked about my wife a lot this episode. She's awesome.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, shout out.
That's my comments.
Dustin, closing comments.
Closing comments. It's Friday. I don't want to talk to any of you after this. I want to hang out, play Dead Space, and
what chapter are you on?
Watch One Piece. Still very early because I had to redo everything from the stupid PC version.
Oh,
so
right.
I'm almost the end of chapter 3.
Wow, I'm on 5 now. I'm slowly getting through.
Nice.
Dig, closing comments.
Gonna go have some pizza. How could I not after this conversation?
Very nice.
Yeah,
deep dish? Probably not.
All right, my friends. Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for gathering. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media, Constellation, Sacred Symbols, Defining Duke, Knockback. We couldn't do it without you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.